Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, June 21st, 2016. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On the roll, Supervisor Avalos. Here. Avalos present. Supervisor Breed.
Here.
Breed present. Supervisor Campos.
Present.
Campos present. Supervisor Cohen. Here. Cohen present. Supervisor Farrell. Present. Farrell present. Supervisor Kim. Kim present. Supervisor Marr. Marr absent. Supervisor Peskin.
Present.
Peskin present. Supervisor Tang.
Present.
Tang present. Supervisor Weiner.
Here.
Weiner present. Supervisor Yee.
Here.
Yee present. Madam President, there is a quorum.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Can you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any communications?
Yes, Madam President. I am in receipt of a communication from Supervisor Eric Marr dated June 17, 2016, requesting to be excused from today's meeting since he will not be in attendance.
Colleagues, is there a motion to excuse Supervisor Marr? Moved by Supervisor Farrell, seconded by Supervisor Campos. Colleagues, can we take this without objection? Without objection, Supervisor Marr is excused. All right, colleagues, are there any changes to the May 17, 2016 board meeting minutes? Seeing no names on the roster, is there a motion to approve those minutes? Motioned by Supervisor Campos, seconded by Supervisor Tang. Colleagues, can we take that motion without objection? Without objection, those meeting minutes will be passed after public comment. All right, Madam Clerk, please read the consent agenda.
Item numbers 1 and 2 comprise the consent calendar. These items are considered routine. If a member objects, an item may be removed and considered separately.
All right. Seeing no names on the roster, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Weiner. Weiner, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. There are 10 ayes.
These items are passed and approved unanimously. Next item.
Item number 3 is an ordinance amending ordinance number 1610 to authorize the collection and levy of special taxes within Special Tax District number 2009-1, San Francisco Sustainable Financing for accessibility modifications and improvements to privately owned buildings or real property.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Item 4.
Item number 4 is an ordinance de-appropriating $300,000 District 7 board projects in the general city responsibility and appropriating $300,000 to various departments in order to support the District 7 participatory budgeting projects in fiscal year 2015-16.
Same house, same call. Without objection, the ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Madam Clerk, please call items 6 and 7 together.
Madam President, would you like me to call 5 and 6?
Yes, 5 and 6. Thank you.
Item number 5 is a proposed interim budget and appropriation ordinance appropriating all estimated receipts and all estimated expenditures for departments of the City and County of San Francisco as of May 31st for the fiscal years ending June 30th, 2017 and June 30th, 2018. Item number 6 is the proposed interim annual salary ordinance enumerating positions in the annual budget and appropriation ordinance for the fiscal years ending June 30th, 2017 and June 30th, 2018 that are created by charter or state law, authorizing appointments or continuation of appointments, specifying and fixing the compensations and work schedules, and authorizing appointments to temporary positions and fixing compensations.
Same house, same call. Without objection, those ordinances are finally passed unanimously. Item 7.
Item number 7 is an ordinance amending the administrative code to require no fewer than 6 navigation centers offering comprehensive health, mental health, and other services to homeless people, moving homeless people off the streets and into permanent housing, requiring the development of plans, transferring all responsibilities to a new department charged with the coordination of services for the homeless, and affirming the CEQA determination.
Same House, same call. Without objection, the ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Item number 8, please.
Would you like me to call 8 and 9 together?
No, just 8.
Item number 8 is an ordinance amending the general plan to make changes associated with creating the Affordable Housing Bonus Program by amending the housing element, urban design element, Van Ness Avenue area plan, Chinatown area plan, downtown area plan, and northeastern waterfront area plan, and making various findings.
Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Madam President, colleagues. As we are all aware, this is the result of several years of work by the Planning Department, the Mayor, and our colleague, Supervisor Tang. And obviously, we need to have a general plan amendment if we are to enact some form of the Affordable Housing Density Bonus Program, be it the 100% Affordable Housing Bonus Program that is the subject of the next item, or the alternative that was proposed by myself and Supervisor Marr, as well as any mixed use or mixed income housing bonus programs that are trailing in committee. However, as I discussed at the Land Use Committee, I believe that the general plan amendment can and should be more narrowly tailored, and to that end, I am urging that we vote down the general plan and direct the department to come forward with a more narrowly tailored general plan amendment that cannot be used to rezone and redevelop vast swaths of the city with attendant unintended consequences. And to that end, respectfully suggest that we vote that down. And I look forward and realize and acknowledge that this matter has been contentious, but I look forward to working with Supervisor Tang and the Mayor's office to see if we can craft a compromise 100% affordable housing bonus program in committee as the general plan amendment is being recrafted by planning staff and approved by the Commission and forwarded to this body.
Supervisor Peskin, just for clarity, what will be the process if this is voted down for the Planning Department to go back to the drawing board? What is your expectation of the conclusion of this plan that would come before us? Since we can't necessarily amend the plan, I don't necessarily feel that direction has been given to clarify what you expect if this were to be voted down.
Presumably that would be the subject of a iterative process with community stakeholders and with members of this body by and through Planning Department staff. But for instance, there are parts of the general, we can only vote the general plan amendment up or down. We cannot in any way craft it. So for instance, I have constituents in Chinatown who would not like to see the Chinatown plan be the subject of a general plan amendment that does not have their consent and has not been done with them. And there are similar ways that we can more narrowly craft the general plan amendment, and I look forward to doing that through an iterative process with members of the community and Planning Department staff.
Okay, and so you're proposing something that's not necessarily a general plan, but specific to each unique neighborhood,
right?
Within the general plan.
Correct, and so I think it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. The way it's currently crafted is it's just a set of asterisks that amend the general plan. I think we can do it in a much more nuanced and narrowly tailored way.
Thank you. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you very much, and I fully understand the concerns shared by Supervisor Peskin on the general plan amendment. Just to state what the language is that we're amending into the general plan, it's to, quote, encourage greater levels of affordability on site. The city may adopt affordable housing policies to permit heights that are several stories taller and building mass that is larger than described here, end quote. As the name of the plan implies, the general plan is general. It serves to provide parameters around future decisions that the Planning Department and the Commission and this board will make. Today, I will be supporting the general plan amendment. I believe it also helps us conform with past decisions that we have actually taken. So, for example, we as a Board of Supervisors have actually voted to increase the heights for projects such as 5M. Voters have decided to increase the height for projects such as Pier 70. But given the concerns described today, I fully understand it, and I'm happy to work with the planning department staff to make sure that we can more narrowly tailor the language around a future general plan amendment.
Thank you, Supervisor Tang. Supervisor Weiner.
So, put in information. Since these were called separately, in terms of debating the underlying issue, I don't know why they were called. They were called separately.
We've only called item number 8.
Right, and so, I mean, I'll be supporting this general plan amendment. I'll reserve my comments on the underlying housing policy issue for the subsequent item.
Okay. Supervisor Peskin.
So, Madam President, in conferring with our Deputy City Attorney, I have some questions that I would like to ask the Deputy City Attorney right now that I don't know that he is prepared to answer, but to put this in some larger procedural context, this board has 90 days to act on a general plan amendment from the date that it is forwarded by the Planning Department and the Planning Commission to this body. The 90 days expires on July 6th. If the board does not act by that date, the general plan amendment is deemed to be passed. If the board adopts it within that 90-day period, it is adopted, and if the board rejects it in that 90-day period, it is deemed rejected. My question to Deputy City Attorney Givner is, insofar as we do not have a full complement of supervisors today, if there's a 5-5 tie, is it deemed approved or is it not deemed approved?
Deputy City Attorney John Givner. I'm trying to just get some consensus in my office, and I'm not sure that we've faced this particular question in a 5-5 vote before. The charter on this states that the Commission shall recommend to the Board for approval or rejection proposed amendments to the general plan. If the Board fails to act within 90 days, then the proposed general plan amendments shall be deemed approved. And just as you discuss, I'm looking back to see what our previous advice has been. Can't answer that on the fly, but I will have an answer for you during this discussion.
So, Madam President, based on that, I would suggest that we come back to this item and skip over item number 9 until we get some advice from Deputy City Attorney Givner in his office.
Okay, Supervisor Campos.
I would simply note that, my understanding and experience has been that approval of an item requires a majority of the Board of Supervisors. So I don't understand why there would be a question about that. If you don't have a majority of the Board of Supervisors approving an item, then that means there is no approval. So I don't understand what the issue is.
Right. In other circumstances where the Board is considering an ordinance, if the vote is 5-5, the ordinance fails. It does not pass. The question here is because the Charter says that the Planning Commission shall send general plan amendments to the Board for approval or rejection. Does it take 6 votes for the Board to reject, or do you apply the rule that would apply to other types of ordinances where a 5-5 tie results in disapproval? And that's a question that is the question that we're looking into right now.
Okay. Supervisor Campos?
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no names on the roster, I'm going to take this opportunity to ask Director Raum, who's here, a question specifically about this particular request. It's my understanding, thank you for being here, John Raum, who's the Director of the Planning Department. My understanding is that on a routine basis, we have approved a general amendment plan, which gives us a guideline or a blueprint to look at planning-related matters throughout the city and county of San Francisco. But we also, specifically, as Supervisor Tang has noted, oftentimes we negotiate and work on specific projects that may be larger in scale or may require something different based on neighborhood character, and we usually have a general enough sense of this particular plan that we're able to tailor specific projects to meet the need of a specific neighborhood, whether they're for or against it. I guess, when was the last time we passed a general plan, and how is this any different than what we've done in the past?
Well, John Ram again, Planning Department. Thank you, Supervisor. I think there are a number of general plan amendments that you approve every year. For example, a couple of last year or the year before, you approved the new housing element of the general plan. And as Supervisor Peskin mentioned, the way the charter is constructed, the board has to approve or disapprove but cannot amend the general plan. So it has to either approve or disapprove within that 90-day period, or it's deemed approved. So there are a number of times when you have approved general plan amendments. They sometimes happen with some of those zoning actions. I believe there might have been such an action on 5M. I don't recall specifically. But as Supervisor Tang mentioned, the general plan in and of itself does not rezone any property. That is the planning code amendments that would do that. So the general plan sets the overall direction and policy for these actions, but it does not, in and of itself, we cannot change zoning or change any other actions without changing the planning code as well.
Thank you. And last but not least, since this is specific to affordable housing, the affordable housing bonus program, it does not at all in any way include market rate housing.
Well, the overall bonus program this would allow for market rate housing for market rate housing developments if the planning code is changed. It would allow for market rate housing developments to go taller or have more density if they provide a higher
30% of the affordable housing.
So it applies to the combined market and affordable, if you will.
Okay, but it's specific to affordable housing solely in that regard. Thank you. Okay, with that, colleagues, we will skip over this item, and Supervisor Tang will be skipping over 9 as well until we have an answer on item number 8. All right, item number 10, Madam Clerk.
Item number 10 is a motion confirming the mayor's reappointment of Eleni Kounalakis to the Port Commission, term ending May 1st, 2020.
All right, colleagues, seeing no names on the roster, can we take this item same house, same call? Without objection, the motion is approved unanimously. Item 11, please.
Item number 11 is a motion confirming the mayor's appointment of Lee Su to the Municipal Transportation Agency Board of Directors, term ending March 1st, 2019.
Supervisor Tang.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak in support of Mr. Lee Su for the MTA Board of Directors. It has been quite some time since that seat has been filled, and especially by someone representing some of the outer neighborhoods, such as the west side of town. I do want to acknowledge former Director Jerry Lee, who was just really wonderful in that position, and so I'm glad to see that the mayor has decided to appoint someone to this board who can understand the challenges with families, with children, getting them to and from school, as well as trying to manage work at the same time, and especially from neighborhoods that generally have challenges with public transportation. So I do urge this board to support Lee Su for the MTA Board of Directors.
Thank you. Seeing no other names on the roster, Supervisor Peskin?
I've read Mr. Su's resume, and I hold nothing against him, but it seems to be he sounds very good on education policy, but seems to be lacking on transportation policy, and I mean him no offense. I understand he is a good man, and I've gotten emails from folks who know him that I respect, but I don't think that he has the qualifications relative to transportation to be on this all-powerful body, and respectfully, I will be voting no.
All right. Thank you, Supervisor Peskin. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you, Madam President. In committee, in the Rules Committee, I too raised some questions about Mr. Lee. I think he's a wonderful man, but I raised questions about his connection to the southeastern parts of San Francisco. He didn't fully demonstrate a working and depth of knowledge that would that made me feel very comfortable in supporting his candidacy moving forward. I supported him in committee and just wanted to go on record that I'm going to be considering changing my vote on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, President Bree. I just want to go on record that I've known Lee Su for a while, and he's one that I believe has very good analytical skills and able to learn issues real quickly as he has on the many issues around the western side of town. And it'd be really good for us to actually have somebody from the western side as the vacant seat that he's going to be filling is from someone that passed away that lived in the same area. So I will be supporting Lee Su for this appointment.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please call the roll.
On item 11, Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
No.
Cohen, no. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
No.
Peskin, no. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Weiner.
Aye.
Weiner, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. There are 9 ayes and 1 no with Supervisor Cohen. Two noes, I'm sorry, with Supervisors Cohen and Peskin in the dissent.
The motion is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 12 is a motion appointing Victoria Baranetsky, residency requirement waived, and reappointing Eric Eldon, residency requirement waived, terms ending April 27, 2018, to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force.
Roll call vote.
On item 12, Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Weiner. Weiner, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. There are 10 ayes.
The motion is approved unanimously. It's now 2:30 and time for our 2:30 commendation. Supervisor Avalos has a 2:30 commendation.
Thank you. Looks like we're ready. I'd like to call Mr. Gilbert Brigham to the podium. So today I'm honoring Gilbert Brigham, who I more know as Gil, and everyone at the IT Bookman Community Center knows as Gil. Has been there providing senior services for many, many years, probably about 30 years, 3 decades, maybe? Okay, not quite. So Gilbert Brigham was born in Harlem, in New York during the Great Depression, and was raised by his mother and grandfather, while his father lived mainly in Chicago. Despite being surrounded by poverty, Gilbert and his family had middle-class values. Because the public schools were primarily focused on discipline and not real education, Mr. Brigham went to Catholic school. After 7 years, he obtained a certificate of attendance, but no high school diploma because his family was unable to afford books and tuition payments. After high school, Mr. Brigham took on a variety of tasks, including shoe shine, dishwasher, factory worker, coat carrier, and summer camp leader. His life turned when he enlisted into the Navy during the Korean War, even though he was almost rejected because of questionable identification in high school graduation documents. On duty in the Navy, he served in a Mobile Construction Battalion, or CB, which built militarized bases, roadways, and airstrips. Mr. Brigham spent most of his service in the Philippines, where he also worked in a supply depot and aircraft carrier. This period of his life was formative, eye-opening, and very much fulfilling. He had rapid promotions with growing responsibilities, and this greatly reduced his natural shyness and helped him build his self-confidence. After 8 years in the Navy, and honorably discharged in San Francisco, where his ship figuratively dropped anchor, Mr. Brigham was immediately employed by the United Airlines in the supply department while continuing to service with the Naval Reserves for 13 more years. He is now a retired Chief Warrant Officer. After United Airlines, he worked in city government for almost 20 years, serving under 3 mayoral administrations. Mr. Brigham also worked in nonprofit agencies for almost 30 years, focusing on serving the elderly, particularly in the OMI, Lakeview neighborhoods. Most recently, he has been a beacon of stability, friendship, and care at IT Bookman Community Center. And I've worked with Gil for a number of years, and it's always been wonderful to see just how much you're revered and adored by people at IT Bookman and the seniors who come. And you've done a lot to make sure that seniors have companionship, that they have healthy opportunities for nutrition and exercise. And I think that's an invaluable amount of service that you've given for years in the OMI neighborhood. And I want to say thank you for your great service for that. There are a few rumors about Mr. Brigham that I think are important to share or maybe clear up, depending on your point of view. Gil had a Brazilian restaurant with his partner Eunice on 24th Street called Eunice's. Gil loves to collect ties, and as you can see, he's got a really fancy tie now and has a very extensive collection of ties. Both he and Eunice loved Carnival and participating in the parade, dancing, and then taking part with all the floats. Mr. Gilbert Brigham has been a wonderful asset in the OMI neighborhood and is now going to be retiring. And I can't imagine someone who has spent so much time doing great work with the elderly actually retiring, but I'm sure you'll still be around in different form, and look forward to seeing you back at IT Bookman Community Center. Mr. Brigham.
Thank you, Supervisor. You know, I really have a tough time dealing with this situation. I want to retire. I think it's timely for me to retire. And I also feel that it's better to have these complimentary words when you're in the upright position as opposed to the horizontal. And I really do appreciate the kind words, but I want to just say that whatever work that I did that I'm being commended for, it really was personally good for me. I enjoyed it. I'm the one that got the pleasure out of it. And so anything that goes beyond that, I deeply appreciate, and I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You want to come closer?
Closer, please, to take the photo.
Oh. Just, I don't know. If you want to talk to them, I'll go tell them they need to talk to you. I mean, I use them.
You can set up a meeting, but no conversation ever transpire.
Reach out yourself. I'll just tell them. They will talk to you and take a meeting.
Sure. I've actually. Later than I needed to.
You're right. I'm sorry. I was out of town. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and it's terrible.
Congratulations again, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir. Oh, it's really nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Oh, my goodness.
We now have another commendation from Supervisor Jane Kim.
Thank you, and I wanted to ask Leslie and Angela Campbell to please come up to the podium. A couple of weeks ago, as many of you read about in the press, we lost a member of our city and our community, Mitzi Renee Campbell, to an act of violence in the south of Market. Her coworkers have reached out to my office to ask us to remember Mitzi, to celebrate her memory, and honor her life's work, which was dedicated to her family and her loved ones. Mitzi was a grandmother and a beloved mother to Leslie Campbell, who is here today. She was one of those special people who could make anyone smile or laugh, and very simply spread joy wherever she went. One of her coworkers described that Mitzi loved to have fun, that she loved to dance while she worked, and would fill a room with joy and laughter. As you know, this is a time in the city where we are building a lot. We are building housing, we are building spaces for new jobs, and Mitzi was one of the many workers that was part of helping to make San Francisco stronger. She was a graduate of City Built in 2013 and is a proud member of Laborers 261. She's survived by her son Leslie and her granddaughter. They have set up a GoFundMe account that has been created in her memory. All the funds will go to her family to be used for the burial expenses, and any aid or support is appreciated. And I think it's important that as we lose a member of our city family, that we remember to give back to the very family that she was here to support. And so I did want to recognize her son, Leslie, who is here today, and also Cahill Contractors, who also reached out to our office so that we could recognize this remarkable woman. So I'm going to hand over the mic to you.
Thank you. Yes, that does describe my mom a whole lot. It has been a tremendous loss for my family as well as her coworkers. My mom was actually born in the city of San Francisco, Western Addition, where she moved with her mom and the rest of siblings in elementary school, and we actually grew up in the Ingleside district where I went on to school, and I remember going to school with this young lady right here. And so I just want to thank you all. Like I said, it's been a very trying time for my daughter, who spent a lot of time with her grandmother. She just was received an award from Obama for scoring the highest in science out of 700 and some odd students in her school. And that took place Wednesday, and Friday morning my mom went to work, and she talked with two friends, and about 9:13 she got off the phone with her niece, and about 9:30 we got the tragic news. So I just want to say thank you for allowing me and my wife here to be able to come, and you guys keep her name in family and prayer and everything. So I really thank you, and thank you to Cahill who in this opportunity with this city build, I believe, that put the program together. So I just want to say thank you to San Francisco for keeping good programs in place for our community.
Thank you for being here, and I also want to give President Breed an opportunity to say some words, and Supervisor Cohen.
Leslie, I just wanted to say your family is definitely in our thoughts and prayers. My mom is also a member of Local 261, and I was with her and other members when this happened to your mom, and everyone was completely distraught, and our thoughts go out to you and your family. I know that Supervisor Farrell immediately adjourned the meeting in honor of your mother. We appreciate her service to the city, and, you know, our heart truly goes out to you and your family, and we're happy that you're here with us today to just, you know, share with us a few words about her. And so thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you very much. Les, I'm sorry that such unfortunate circumstances bring you here to the chamber. But I think if we just take a moment and we reflect on the man that you've grown up to be, that I've known since childhood, I think that's a direct reflection and a positive credit to your mother. And you should be proud of that. And just want to let you know that my family, the Cohen family, will be lifting you up in prayer.
Thank you.
Thank you again for being here. Our thoughts will continue to be with you and your family. Okay, and thank you, Supervisor Kim. All right, with that, we will go back to our regular business of the board. Madam Clerk, can we skip over and go to our committee reports?
Yes. Items 19 and 20 were considered by the Budget and Finance Committee at a special meeting on Thursday, June 16th at 10 o'clock a.m. and were forwarded as committee reports.
Roll call vote.
Would you like me to call the items separately? There are a number of them.
Well, call item 19 first, please.
19 and 20 together?
19, 20, yes.
Item 19 was amended in committee with a new title and is a resolution designating San Francisco Print Media, commonly known as the Examiner, and the San Francisco Chronicle to be the official newspapers of the City and County of San Francisco during fiscal year 2016-2017. Item 20 was amended in committee also with a new title and is a resolution designating SF Weekly, Small Business Exchange, and San Francisco Bayview to be the outreach periodicals for the African American community, Sing Tao Daily and SF Weekly to be the outreach for the Chinese community, El Reportero and SF Weekly to be the outreach periodicals for the Latino community, Bay Area Reporter and SF Weekly to be the outreach periodicals for the LGBT communities, Central City Extra for the Central Market and Tenderloin neighborhoods, Marina Times for the Marina and Cow Hollow neighborhoods, and Bayview Potrero to be for the Potrero Hill, Bayview, Mission Bay, and Soma neighborhoods.
Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to oppose the changes made in committee on item 19. I think it sets a terrible precedent and example when one of the bidders did not respond within the bid time frame only to have this board reward that behavior. One of the bidders won that bid fair and square. I understand that the past practice has been to split, but that was when both of the bidders bid timely. And insofar as one of the bidders failed to bid at all until long after the bid period closed, I don't think that this body should be rewarding that kind of behavior. This sending a message in this city that does RFPs, that sets the rules, that require people to play by the rules, whether you're applying for a job or an RFP or an RFI or an RFQ, to say that you can miss the deadline and then be rewarded after the fact. I think that is a terrible precedent, and I'll be voting against item number 19.
Supervisor Peskin, what about item number 20?
I have no problem with 20.
Okay. Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you. And this was actually the first time for me in committee dealing with these issues before. And I have to say I was not pleased by the whole process. I mean, the fact that, and it is not a criticism at all of the staff who made the recommendations. I think they were just going by what the process is. But the process is, there's something wrong with it. I mean, the fact is that for item 20, what the process yielded was a recommendation that SF Weekly, and no offense against SF Weekly, but that would be the sole noticing periodical for the LGBT community, for the Chinese community, and for the Latino community, not the BAR, not Singtel, not El Reportero. So there are issues with this process, period. And we fixed that in committee by including those publications that actually are focused on our communities, not removing SF Weekly, but adding. In terms of the Chronicle and the Examiner, the Chronicle did state during public comment in committee that they received no notice to bid, and that they bid when they learned of it, which was after the fact. Obviously, we were not part of that process, but that is what the Chronicle stated. And I think that, I don't want to speak for the whole committee, but I can speak for myself, that for both of these items, I would rather be a little more liberal about including periodicals than excluding, with the ultimate goal being to try to get these notices as broadly disseminated as possible. And so if we're using both the Examiner and the Chronicle, and then some of the more specific community newspapers, I think we achieve that. But the process as a whole is problematic, and I will just state that for the record.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiner. And I just want to add, the process as a whole is definitely problematic with regards to some of the very grassroots newspapers and the barriers that those particular newspapers have to jump over in order to be considered is definitely problematic, and we should look at the process. But in the meantime, I don't necessarily believe that we should slow down moving forward with this in order to make sure that we are actually advertising the kinds of things that we need to advertise and get out there to the public. As much as the process clearly is broken, it doesn't mean that we should stop it overall. Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, Madam President. And I echo Supervisor Peskin's concerns overall, as well as Supervisor Weiner's comments. You know, this process itself, just to give you one example, we score them on many different topics. Originally, when this was brought up, it was, I believe there are 4 printers in the city of San Francisco, and now there are only one. There's only one. And technically, every single person except for the Examiner in any of these is non-responsive because they don't print in San Francisco, but especially many of these small newspapers can't afford it anymore because they're higher cost. So I would just say, from my perspective, I think without a doubt we should be inclusive rather than exclusive. Obviously different reading audiences, but we want to have a broad reach as a Board of Supervisors when we notice things. I agree we want people to play by the rules for sure, but I think this is a time, and I'm glad to hear my colleagues comment on this, having gone through this the last 3 years at Budget Committee, and go through this rigmarole every single year, that we actually might have some momentum to actually change the process so we can have a true and fair evaluation, and particularly in the community outreach papers that we have true representation. I mean, that the BAR wasn't selected for the LGBT community or the Sun. I mean, it just didn't make any sense at all what the outcome was. So I'm very happy to support what came out of committee with the notion that we will be looking at this going forward.
Thank you. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you so much. Supervisor Farrell, before you're happy to support it, hold on, listen to my concerns, because I'm reading this, and I remember the past 2 years having questions about the entire process, and perhaps we will have the wherewithal to deal with it this year. But I have a problem with what came out of committee, particularly the Potrero View, which is a new publication. I'm familiar with the Potrero, and I'm familiar with the Bayview. The Potrero historically covers Potrero Hill. Just recently, barely started covering Dogpatch, but has not done an adequate job, a very good job, when it comes to covering the south side of the hill, number one, let alone the entire Bayview community, let alone even Visitation Valley. I checked in with my colleague, Supervisor Kim, to find out if she had heard of the Potrero View, and she hadn't. Don't want to put words in her mouth. I'll let her certainly speak for herself. But they do not cover the Mission Bay or the Soma neighborhoods. So I am actually going to be voting no on this, and I hope that colleagues will vote this down with me. This is actually flawed and has gotten away from us on this, and I'd like to definitely reconsider, particularly when I'm thinking about the vulnerable communities that are in the southeast part of San Francisco. Real concerns. Perhaps I can make an amendment that folks can support, maybe amending and pulling out the Potrero View, and I'm open to other amendments. Supervisor Kim, I don't know if you have any remarks that you wanted to talk about.
Supervisor,
if you could re-refer to me, I'll work out my language for the amendment. Thank you.
And just for clarity, Supervisor Cohen, you don't have a problem with item number 19 designating the San Francisco Examiner as the official advertising for 2016-2017. You just have a problem with item number 20.
Correct, Madam President. I just have issues with item 20, not 19.
Thank you. Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Madam President, colleagues. First of all, this process actually isn't troublesome because of the Board of Supervisors or our laws. It's actually been troublesome for a number of years since a ballot initiative that was put on by other parties was passed. Nonetheless, that ballot initiative does give the board to have the discretion that we're exercising today, but it gives staff some very specific instructions, including whether the publication is printed in the city and county of San Francisco. And as Supervisor Farrell said, there are less and less, indeed only one daily that is currently printed in the city. Having said that, the historic practice of this board has been, and I think correctly, to try to get official city advertising into as many communities, geographic, ethnic, as possible. That is not what is going on in item number 19. It's not that we are advertising in both papers at the same time. The proposal that is before us is that the advertising happen in one paper for 6 months and in the other paper for 6 months. This is actually confusing to the consumer because they need to know that in the middle of the year, if they want to see official city advertising, they have to stop reading one daily paper and go to the other daily paper. But in any event, the Chronicle did not submit timely, and I heard the words of Supervisor Wiener, but I defer to our staff, Ms. Kofo Domingo, who represented to this Board of Supervisors that indeed the Chronicle was outreached to, that indeed they did not respond, and that they actually, and I don't want to put words in her mouth and we can hear from her directly, Madam President, but that they actually admitted they just blew the deadline, missed the notice. I cannot think that this board would reward that. I'm not saying that they acted in a malfeasant way, but I don't think that this board should reward somebody who did not respond timely. In all of these other cases of outreach, people responded timely, but they didn't meet various criteria under that proposition that was passed many years ago relative to being printed in the city and what have you. And that is certainly the will of the board and the past practice of the board to advertise in El Repetero and Tsingtao, even though they're not printed in the city. But that is not the case with item number 19. And with that, I'd like to ask Ms. Kofo Domingo if she could clarify that the Chronicle indeed failed to timely respond within the timeframes of the bid.
Is Ms. Domingo here today?
Yes, she is. Good afternoon, Supervisors. My
Hello.
name is Kofo Domingo, and I'm the Assistant Director at OCA.
At where, I'm sorry?
At OCA, Office of Contract Administration. And we are responsible for the procurement process and reporting to you on the evaluation, reporting our findings to you so that the board can recommend the papers that will become the official advertising. And Supervisor Peskin is right in that this year, unlike last year, the San Francisco Chronicle bid is considered non-responsive, meaning that they did not turn, they were notified along with the examiner, but they did not turn their bid in on time. And but we did receive their bid, and they met all but one of the admin code requirements, and which is that their paper is not printed in San Francisco area. And that speaks to item number 19.
Thank you. Supervisor Peskin, is there anything further?
No, rather than reject item 19, I just think we should go with staff's recommendation. I don't want to reject item 19 and not have advertising. I just think we should go with the recommendation of staff as was made before the committee amended in the non-responsive bidder.
Okay. Supervisor Campos?
Thank you. Thank you very much also to staff for the presentation. Unless there's any evidence to the contrary that disputes that, in fact, the Chronicle was notified, I think that we have to respect the process, and I think that we should go back to the original recommendation from staff. I think that if the process is going to mean anything, people have to follow it. And I think that a sophisticated player like the Chronicle should be able to comply with the rules that were set out by the city.
Supervisor Kim?
Thank you, Ms. Domingo. We were both at Budget Committee when the Chronicle had stated that they just hadn't gotten the notice, and that was why they did not submit. And so I didn't hear a response to that, so I just assumed that to be the case. Could you clarify OCA's response to that statement?
The standard OCA practice is that when we put bids and solicitation out, we send outreach emails to all vendors who have participated in past bids. And then we did the same, and we have documentation that we did send an email to the Chronicle and the Examiner, the same address we use every year. And when we did not receive a bid from the Chronicle, we called them to find out why they did not bid, and that it was at that time we were told that they missed the email.
I see. And so an email went out to both newspapers. The Examiner did manage to submit a bid in time, and the Chronicle did not. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
No, I'm sorry, ma'am. You're out of order. Supervisor Yee.
Yeah, I want to thank you for this clarification, because at the committee meeting, I only heard one side of this, and that's why I supported the amendment at the time. Hearing what I just heard today, I'm going to be supporting Supervisor Peskin's motion to support the staff's original recommendation.
Thank you. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. Question to the staff. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to remember the Chronicle having trouble meeting the deadline last year.
No, they did meet the deadline last year. They were just not responsible, which means they couldn't meet all of the requirements of our administrative code. And
what does that mean? What trouble does the San Francisco Chronicle have in meeting everything on your checklist?
They print outside of San Francisco limits, and the administrative code does say that we would like our official newspapers to print within the city limits.
So, correct me, have they had the contract before, even though they print outside San Francisco?
Correct.
And what special circumstances did they present to you or the reviewing body that allowed this waiver to go on?
Usually every year, again, as OCA, we will put out the solicitation and report to you what our findings are and how we've evaluated. And we usually will recommend only the bidders who are responsive, meaning that they are here on time, and responsible, which means they meet all the requirements. Then we leave it up to the board to make the requirement.
I understand that, but basically what you're saying is the Chronicle has already demonstrated that they tend to be a little raggedy when it comes to the deadline, but yet they still have been able to be awarded the contract. So my question is what is the difference in this particular case? Again, they've demonstrated raggedy behavior, but yet they want to be the contract. So for what reason should I honor the request that Supervisor Peskin is putting forward?
The only difference this year is that they did not turn their bid in on time. And that's the reason why we did not recommend them. And usually in past, yes, the board typically has allowed both papers to be the official, even though Chronicle did not meet all the requirements, and they have typically shared it every year.
Okay.
6 months at a time.
And I would imagine there's some kind of cost associated with this. What is the cost of, or the money, the amount of money and revenue that is generated from, if the examiner is the sole paper? I would imagine it's cheaper.
Typically, what we estimate the spending this year is approximately $420,000 for official advertising.
$420,000
for both the for official advertising.
Okay.
And based on our what was submitted, the Chronicle is slightly more expensive than the Examiner as well. For departments, but typically that has been no different from past years as well.
Okay. So I guess I still don't really understand why in past years we've allowed the Chronicle to slide. I guess we're just going to put our foot down and say no more. I'll come talk to you. Thank you, Madam President. I'm done.
Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, Madam President. Is there someone from the Chronicle here that, ma'am, might I ask you to respond to the question of timeliness? Please come on the microphone. I think it's only fair we have this discussion.
Yes, sir. Supervisors, Madam President. My name is Diane Fitzgibbon from the San Francisco Chronicle.
Speak into the mic.
Pardon me?
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Speak into the microphone.
Thank you.
There you go.
My name is Diane Fitzgibbon from the San Francisco Chronicle, and previous years we have met the deadline for the bid. This particular year we did not receive an email. I received a phone call from David Bowie from the Contract Administration Office a week later asking where our bid was. And when I checked all of my emails, our spam filters, everything, the email wasn't there. Mr. Bowie sent me a PDF of the email, and I noticed that my email was formatted incorrectly. The email for CNSB, the clearinghouse, was misspelled, but the email for the examiner was correct. And that's why we did not receive the email. After conversations with the head of the contract admin office, we did receive permission to submit the bid, but Jackie Fong was on vacation that week, so we had to wait another week. So it was 2 weeks before we were able to submit the bid, but it was only because we did not receive the email prior to the deadline. Had we been notified, I would have submitted that bid immediately. I've been working on this bid now for 15 years, and so I'm on top of it all the time.
Okay.
Supervisor Farrell.
Maybe back to our OCA email addresses. I mean,
Yes, Supervisor.
there's a comment that the address was wrong and two addresses were wrong.
I don't want to go back and forth, but that would be the first time we've heard that. We've used the exact same address. Again, we've been doing this for a number of years. Everybody else received it using the same poll that we've done every year. And just as she said, she didn't know until we called her and found out why we didn't, which was unusual.
Okay.
Is that it, Supervisor Farrell?
Yes, thank
Can
you.
I ask you a question about the San Francisco print media, which is doing business as SF Weekly, as well as Small Business Exchange, with a, I guess, estimated total of 65,000 African Americans supposedly reached? How do you determine those numbers or verify those numbers?
And so, Supervisor...
I mean, for example, as an African American, the only newspaper that I have access to on this list is the San Francisco Bayview.
Correct.
In the community specifically, not just necessarily at my home.
As we do every year, OCA reached out to 49 local newspapers in time, and we do know that we are going to be spending a little bit more time on the outreach newspapers because they are smaller businesses. And after reaching out to 49 local newspapers, we received 10 bids. None of them came in on time, which meant that no one had a complete bid on time. And even one of those bids that we received withdrew because they could not meet the requirements of the bid. Also, one of the things this bid allows is for the vendors to self-certify what categories they want to be recognized. And so SF Weekly chose, instead of being a neighborhood newspaper, chose to be to certify themselves in the community outreach areas. And so we don't have any requirements within the bid that designates any kind of newspaper into any category. And we also do not require that they prove their publication circulation. But SF Weekly is one of the two vendors who actually have third-party audited circulation, which they submitted to us.
Thank you. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you. If I may I just, the facts are what they are. May I ask you what email address you sent the request for a response to?
Unfortunately, I don't have that with me, but I'll be happy to get that to you as soon as I do not have that information. dfitzgibbon@sfchronicle.com.
Okay, and is that have you sent requests to that email address before?
Yes, you have. And David just told me that, yes, it is the historical email that we have. We've used it in the past. Every year we come up here, and yes, that's our vendor outreach email that we have.
And did you receive any notice from the Chronicle that their email had changed?
Nothing formally that was on record at that time.
Okay. To the Chronicle, if I may, is the email address, they just mentioned the email address that they sent it to, is that the correct email address?
Ma'am, you would need to go to the microphone.
Yes, Supervisor, that is my email address. However, when I asked David Bowie to forward me the email that he sent to me, he didn't do that. He sent me a PDF of the email. And when I saw the email address, it had quotation marks around it. And sometimes, depending on the email server, if you have quotation marks around an email address, it won't go through. Just from personal experience, I know that. So I've had to remove those quotation remarks in order for it to go through. It never went through. As I said, sir, I checked spam email, I checked junk email, I asked our IT department to check for it, and it was nowhere to be found.
Do you have any document that shows that?
Document of what, sir?
Well, you have here staff that is saying we sent it to this email address. They say that they have proof that they did that. They have documentation to do that. And so you're saying that the email address that they say they sent it to is the correct email address, and yet you're saying that you didn't get it. Well, we have to go by the facts and by the evidence. And I haven't gotten anything right now that says that what staff is saying is not true.
I wasn't prepared for this discussion. I would be happy to go to our IT department and have them look through the email records And I have the PDF that David Bowie sent me showing how my email is formatted, but it didn't come through to my email address, or otherwise I would have addressed it immediately.
Well, my point would be, colleagues, that if there is a dispute, then I think the person that is challenging the accuracy of what staff is saying has the burden to show that, in fact, what the staff is saying is not accurate. And not only that, but here you have someone who's saying that they've been working on this for years. I think you said 15 years.
Yes, sir.
And I would think that having worked on this for 15 years, that this is something you would be waiting for this to be requested. And if it was your first rodeo, I would say, okay, maybe that's understandable. But if it is your 15th rodeo, it's hard to say, well, it's hard to believe what's being said. So thank you.
Supervisor...
I don't have a question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Kim?
I just want to clarify, again, I know you mentioned this at Budget Committee, but which are the papers, again, that do print in San Francisco?
Give me a minute to find that. I did want to add that in addition to sending with regards to the Chronicle, I wanted to add that in addition to sending the vendor email, we posted it publicly on the city's website. Mm-hmm. So if someone did
you post it in the newspaper? Did you post it in any newspaper?
No, we did not.
Okay.
Our bids are usually posted on the city website. And
every year at the same time?
Exactly the same time, on the same day.
Got it.
So if someone tells us usually they didn't get an email, if they're checking the website as they should, vendors should, then it is listed on there.
Thank you. Supervisor Kim?
I wanted to answer her question.
Okay.
Yeah. With regards to the outreach newspapers and the official, the newspapers that do print in San Francisco are the San Francisco Examiner, El Reportero, Small Business Exchange, SF Weekly, Jasmine Blue Media, doing business as Marina Times, and the Potrero View, Bay Area Reporter, and Central City Extra.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no other names on the roster, clearly, I just want to be clear. From my perspective, we should approve item number 19 as amended previously, and we should maybe continue or reconsider item number 20. And the reason why I support item number 19 is because the Chronicle and the Examiner basically are newspapers that have a broad circulation throughout the city and county of San Francisco. And I realize that there are some concerns here, but the reality is those are the kinds of newspapers that members of the public read on a day-to-day basis. And I think eliminating the Chronicle from this particular equation eliminates a large constituency of people that deserve to have a right to know what the city and county of San Francisco is doing. We know the process is flawed. We know that there's work that needs to be done. I'm not particularly a fan, as I've said, over the years of how we're selecting our community newspapers, and I'm happy to work on making certain adjustments to that. But I'm definitely going to be supporting item number 19. And I'm open to making changes to item number 20. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you. For me, this is not about eliminating one paper or the other. There's clearly a benefit that each paper brings, and they have strong circulation. It's about the rules. So with that, I just had a question. Did Supervisor, through the chair, Supervisor Peskin, make a motion to amend the amended item to the original recommendation by taking out the Chronicle and simply leaving the Examiner? Just
to Supervisor Campos through the President. I don't think I said the magic words I move to, but I certainly intend to, and if you would like to consider it or like to second it, I make a motion to go with the original recommendation of
Supervisor
staff on
Campos,
item
are you
19.
making a motion?
I'll make the motion to amend, to take out the Chronicle and go with the original recommendation from staff.
Okay, and then seconded by Supervisor Peskin. Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you, Madam President. And I want to reiterate what President Breed said, which I had also noted before, because I think it's very important that one of the bottom lines here is the purpose of these notices is to get them out broadly. And that's why in committee on item 20, because the recommendations for just SF Weekly was not sufficient to reach various communities, we didn't take SF Weekly out. We added the more specific community-based newspapers, and that was a good thing. And here, in terms of broad dissemination, it makes sense to have both the Chronicle and the Examiner, and I would be doing the same exact thing if the roles were reversed. And in terms of what happened here, we have right now a bit of a swearing match going on between the department and the Chronicle in terms of whether it was appropriately addressed. Neither one has brought the email, so I don't know why then the burden shifts one way or another. But for me, especially when you have this kind of dispute, and the Chronicle is stating on the record unequivocally that they did not receive it, that they've done a search, that they did not get the email, that they think there was an issue with the address, why would we not give the benefit of the doubt to having broader dissemination of our notices? And again, if the roles were reversed, I would take the exact same position with respect to the Examiner, because the Examiner has a reach that's not identical to the Chronicle. They reach overlapping yet in part different audiences, and that's a good thing.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiner. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, President Breed. I will be supporting the motion put forward by Supervisor Campos and Supervisor Peskin. I understand the need to include these other papers that were amended in item number 20. SF Weekly simply just does not have Spanish and Chinese language, for example. And while it seems like Tsingtao is one of the few papers that may get awarded today that prints outside of San Francisco, they're also a regional newspaper. I believe actually out of all of the papers that we are looking at today, the Chronicle, the San Francisco Bayview, is that correct? And Tsingtao are the only three publications that print outside of San Francisco. And I just have to say, I'm very disappointed that we have a major newspaper that is printing outside of the city when it is clearly possible, when the Examiner has decided that they can print within the city boundary line. And the one thing I'll just say is, if it was a case that the Examiner was a fee per newspaper, I would have some concerns. But the Examiner is a free daily. There is absolutely no limitation to anyone being able to access what is printed in the Examiner on a daily basis, whereas with the Chronicle, you must pay to be able to access that newspaper, even online. So I actually think that we will not be losing anything by awarding the Examiner the sole contract for the official advertising. In fact, I think they'll have greater reach because their newspaper is free, and frankly, they are printed here in the city, and they submitted their bid on time. And hearing that this bid goes out every year at the same time, that it's publicly noticed on the city, on our website, and that the emails have gone out every year to the same email addresses, it just does not seem to make sense to reward a bidder that was not able to meet these guidelines. And so I support OCA's original recommendation. I apologize, I should have asked further questions after that comment was made in public comment. Because it was not countered, I assumed it to be just the true situation. But hearing, I think, the information before us today, I'm not worried about access to information by giving this award to the Examiner. In regards to our ethnic media press, I think in these cases, it is appropriate for the board to amend item number 20 because the SF Weekly, which is a great publication, just does not print in Spanish and Chinese. And so including two newspapers that are able to do that makes sense to me. I am open to working with Supervisor Cohen on the Potrero View. I did not question this at Budget Committee because I'm not familiar with whether they do good outreach in the Bayview and Potrero Hill, but I don't see any coverage of the south of Market in the Potrero View, and I think maybe some minimal of mission-based, so I'm happy to defer to Supervisor Cohen on that particular publication.
Okay, so we will take each of these items separately, specifically item number 19 on the amendment to revert back to the original resolution minus the chronicle. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on the amendment?
On the amendment to item 19, Supervisor Breed.
No.
Breed, no. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Do you want me to repeat the amendment?
No, I'm thinking. No pressure. Yes.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Nope.
Farrell, no. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang.
No.
Tang, no. Supervisor Weiner.
No.
Weiner, no. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. There are 6 ayes and 4 noes, with Supervisors Breed, Farrell, Tang, and Weiner in the dissent.
The amendment passes. On the item as amended?
On item 19 as amended, Supervisor Breed?
No.
Breed, no. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen?
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell?
Nope.
Farrell, no. Supervisor Kim?
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin?
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang?
No.
Tang, no. Supervisor Weiner?
No.
Weiner, no. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos? Avalos, aye. There are 6 ayes and 4 noes, with Supervisors Breed, Farrell, Tang, and Weiner in the dissent.
The resolution as amended is adopted. And on item number 20, Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I'd like to continue this item for 1 week for the next June board meeting, June 28th.
Okay, Supervisor Cohen has made a motion to continue item 20 to the meeting of June 28, seconded by Supervisor Campos. Colleagues, can we take this without objection?
Thank you.
Without objection, this item will be continued to the meeting of June 28, 2016. Madam Clerk, next item.
3 p.m.
Items 21 and through 23 were considered by the Budget and Finance Committee at a special meeting on Friday, June 17th at 10 o'clock a.m. Item 21 was forwarded as a committee report. Item numbers 2 and 3 were not forwarded to the board, this board meeting, and are not before the board today for consideration.
Items 22 and 23?
Yes, items 22 and 23.
Okay, item 21.
Yes, item number 21 is an ordinance amending the administrative code to establish a new Department of Homelessness and supportive housing, transfer homeless-related functions to the new department, establish the local homeless coordinating board to advise the new department, and serve as a continuum of care governing body in accordance with federal regulations.
Roll call vote.
On item 21, Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen?
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell?
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin?
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang? Tang, aye. Supervisor Weiner? Weiner, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos?
Aye.
Avalos, aye. There are 10 ayes.
The ordinance passes unanimously on the first reading. Please call items 24 through 28 together.
Items 24 and through 31 were considered by the Government Audit and Oversight Committee at a regular meeting on Thursday, June 16th at 9:30 a.m. and all were forwarded as committee reports. Items 24 through 28 are ordinances adopting and implementing amendments to Memorandum of Understandings and a Memorandum of Understanding with the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, Local 21, Services Employees International, Local 1021, Unrepresented Employees, Service Employees International Union 1021, Staff and per diem nurses, and Teamsters Local 856, supervising registered nurses for the fiscal year 2016-2017.
On those items, colleagues, can we take those items 24 through 28, same house, same call? Without objection, those ordinances pass unanimously on the first reading. call items 29 and 30 together.
Item 29 is a resolution retroactively approving Amendment Number 1 to the contract for behavioral health services with the Regents of the University of California Division of Substance Abuse and Addiction Medicine to extend the contract by 2 years through December 31st, 2016 for a total amount not to exceed approximately $27 million. Item 30 is a resolution approving a contract with the Walgreen Company to provide pharmacy services under the Federal Drug Discount Program established by the Public Health Service Act for a 5-year term through June 30th, 2021, in an amount not to exceed approximately $19.6 million.
Colleagues, can we take these items, same house, same call? Without objection, the resolution is adopted unanimously. Item 31.
Item number 31 is a resolution retroactively authorizing the Department of Public Works to accept and expend a grant of up to $200,000 from the San Francisco Bay Area Rapid Transit District for the Pit Stop Public Toilet Program for the period through February 16, 2017.
Madam Clerk, please add my name as a co-sponsor. Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the resolution is adopted unanimously. Please call items 32 and 33 together.
Items 32 and 33 were considered by the Land Use and Transportation Committee at a regular meeting on Monday, June 20th at 1:30 p.m. and were forwarded as committee reports. Item 32 is an ordinance waiving the inclusionary affordable housing requirement, exempting certain floor area from the calculation of gross floor area and reducing transferable development rights by that amount for a project at 1066 Market Street, and making various appropriate findings. Item number 33 is a resolution approving and authorizing an agreement for the conveyance of real property for construction of an 85-dwelling unit multi-family residential project pursuant to the land dedication permitted under the separate ordinance and adopting appropriate findings.
Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, President Breed. Colleagues, I want to thank you for your consideration of the amended legislation that is before us today. I want to first of all acknowledge the hard work of both our project sponsor, Shorenstein, and members of our Tenderloin neighborhood community who have spent the last 2 months working together on putting together a winning package for our community, which includes the acquisition of 101 Hyde Street, a fully entitled project that was once under private ownership and set to build market rate housing to transfer to the Mayor's Office of Housing for the development of 87 permanently affordable housing units, which will be available to the income range of the residents of this neighborhood. This proposed ordinance has many moving pieces, and so I do want to acknowledge all of the parties in working to bring together their diligence, but also their creativity, ensuring that we could bring together a final project that everyone agreed upon. The legislation before you today does the following. One, the inclusionary affordable housing requirements set forth in Section 415 of the Planning Code would be waived for the housing project at 1066 Market Street. And in exchange for the waiver of this requirement, the ordinance would require a dedication of land located at 101 Hyde Street and would authorize the city to accept this land dedication. Finally, the ordinance does exempt 21,000 square foot of proposed development from calculation of floor area ratio and the requirement to purchase TDR for the square footage. 101 Hyde is a particularly meaningful site for the community, as it is the former U.S. Postal Office that so many of our Tenderloin residents have depended on. It was in many ways their connection to the world. Many members of this board have worked with our SRO collaborative to fight to provide mailboxes in many of these buildings. But even in places where landlords did provide mailboxes, the U.S. Postal Service has refused to provide mail to individual residents as they do in apartment buildings. And we actually lost a very important case in our federal courts. This post office site then became a site that our residents could be connected to the world to get letters, cards, bills, important information about their livelihood and their benefits. To be able to ensure that this site, one of the last remaining soft sites in the Tenderloin, will now be 100% permanent affordable housing is a huge victory for our community. As many of you know, and certainly our developers know, as a policymaker, I always prefer on-site affordable housing as it ensures a more diverse community and units that go online at the same time as market rate units. And we all know that inclusionary housing is a critical component to our affordable housing production gap, and it is 100% provided by a private developer community. However, in this particular case, the community has expressed concerns that the income ranges, as defined by our inclusionary housing policy, is simply too high for many of our families and seniors that live in the Tenderloin neighborhood, and that the Tenderloin would not be a beneficiary of the affordable units that would be built at 55% of average median income. In fact, the average income of students and families that attend Demiralek Academy, just one block away, is on average 30% of average median income. So during the hearing, we heard many community members express that this new development was out of reach of many in the neighborhood. And so the ordinance and 309 approval before you today is a community-driven solution that prioritizes development without displacement. And after learning that the market rate development at the old post office site on Hyde and Golden Gate had fell through, community members had seen this as an opportunity to improve a very blighted corner and also develop a site with 87 units of affordable housing. I again want to recognize our project sponsor for being committed to building affordable housing units on site first, and that they did not select the in lieu fee as their first choice. And for that reason, I did not support the Planning Department's recommendation to not exempt 1066 from the TDR acquisition. And in this case, the Planning Commission did agree with this and voted 6-0 to support the legislation that is before the Board of Supervisors today. I also want to thank the project sponsor for working with the community to develop a creative deal, which included the purchase of a site and, on top of that, dedicated $6.5 million in future development costs to a nonprofit developer who will win the site through an RFP with the Mayor's Office of Housing. This will ensure that this project is shovel-ready and will also provide additional funds to activate the site in the meantime to provide a neighborhood amenity like a food hall for the Tenderloin neighborhood. Colleagues, I do ask for your support for this today. This will also allow the site to be transferred to the Mayor's Office of Housing upon closing to then issue an RFP out to the community to build affordable housing here in the future. I want to thank also the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation, Demiralek Academy, Hospitality House, Market Street for the Masses, Randy Shaw, Meg Spriggs of Shorenstein, our City Attorney's Office. This was quite a complicated deal. Our Planning Department, Department of Real Estate, and the Mayor's Office of Housing to really do a lot of work to get this legislation before the Board of Supervisors today. So, colleagues, I ask for your support.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Colleagues, can we take this item? Can we take these items, same house, same call? Without objection, the items are passed unanimously. Let's go to our 3 p.m. special order. Madam Clerk, please call items 13 through 16.
Items 13 through 16 comprise a special order at 3 o'clock p.m. that was continued open at the June 14, 2016 meeting to hear from persons interested in the Planning Commission's certification of a conditional use authorization dated April 7, 2016 for a proposed project at 32 Ord Street, and items numbers 14 through 16 comprise of motions to either approve or disapprove the Planning Commission's decision and to direct preparation of appropriate findings.
Okay, colleagues, we have before us now the appeal of the conditional use authorization for the project at 32 Ord Street in District 8. For this hearing, it's my understanding that we have reached a compromise, and with that, I recognize Supervisor Scott Wiener at this time.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And yes, Madam President, you are correct. The parties, after a mediation by my office, have reached a resolution, which I will read. I want to, as I did last week when the Cumberland Street project was resolved, I want to really thank the neighbors, my constituents, for participating in good faith towards a resolution, as well as the project sponsor. And I want to thank Annie Fryman of my office for doing amazing work facilitating this mediation and moving us towards this resolution. So my colleagues, I have distributed the detailed settlement or negotiated resolution, which is signed by the parties, and I'd ask that it be made part of the record. I do have a boiled down version that I'm going to read now that summarizes the resolution, and I'll read this. The project sponsor is an appellant for the residential project at 32 Ord Street agree to resolve the conditional use appeal by adopting additional conditions from the last set of approved architectural plans. The exact language for these conditions have been distributed to each supervisor, the planning department, and the city attorney. I will read a digest of the lengthy agreement. First, conditions unrelated to setbacks include the maximum allowable height and transparency of the surface material for the planter box on the rear patio and railings surrounding that part of the patio. Second, front setback was reduced by the amount allowable by the planning code without need for a variance up to 1 foot. Next, the rear setback south of the living room midline is to be increased by between 3 and 6, or excuse me, to be increased by 3 foot 6 inches, and the rear setback north of the living room midline is to be increased by 6 feet 6 inches. Note the 7-foot side setback from the north property line to the living room wall shall be retained from a point 1 foot west of grid line 3 to the point 6 feet 6 inches from the previously approved west wall of the living room. In other words, no change. Next, the roof height above the living room will not exceed 11 feet 1 inch from the approved finished floor of the third floor, and the roof will be sloped down towards 30 Ord Street from the living room midline. Finally, the roof pitch will be a constant slope down from 11 feet 1 inches at the living room midline to 8 foot 6 inches maximum roof height at architectural grid line B. And the roof shall have no curb except where the roof terminates at the shared property line with 30 Ord Street. And again, that is simply a summary. The governing, controlling resolution is the signed document that we've distributed and made part of the record. So at the conclusion of the hearing, I will make a motion to adopt an amended conditional use, and I'll make the motion at that time. And again, thank you to everyone who made this happen.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. And with that, I will open this item up to public comment. Are there any members of the public who'd like to speak regarding this particular item? Seeing none, public comment is now closed.
You had there was one.
This is regarding a specific item of 32 Ord, which has actually been compromised. Thank you. Okay.
Compromised. I'm a member of the Planning Committee of the Eureka Valley Neighborhood Association. I want to thank Supervisor Wiener for his participation and his staff for coming to this negotiated settlement. This is what we want to see, and it's really very gratifying. I also want to point out that this comes to you as a result of the interim zoning controls that Supervisor Wiener's office also sponsored. Supervisor Wiener was very active in helping us to achieve that. And this is an example of just what those zoning controls can bring about. So we're very gratified about that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who'd like to comment on this specific item? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. And this hearing has been held and is now filed. And Supervisor Wiener, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, Madam President, I would. My motion is as follows: to amend item 15 to disapprove the conditional use and to adopt a revised conditional use that includes the Planning Commission's adopted conditions with additional / amended conditions per the agreement that I have distributed, and then to move item 15 as amended and to table items 14 and 16.
Okay, so we will take the amendments first. Supervisor Wiener has made a motion to amend, seconded by Supervisor Peskin. Colleagues, can we take the amendment to item number 15 without objection? Without objection, the amendment passes unanimously. And the motion to table items 14 and 16 and move forward with item 15 as amended. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On items 14 through 16, Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen?
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell?
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin?
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos?
Aye.
Avalos, aye. There are 10 ayes.
Okay, items 14 and 16 are tabled, and item 15, as amended, passes unanimously. All right, let's go to our next 3 p.m. special order. Madam Clerk, please call items 17 and 18.
Item number 17 and 18 comprise a special order at 3 o'clock p.m. that the Board of Supervisors will convene as a committee of the whole pursuant to motion number 1662 that was approved on May 10th to consider objections to the Public Works Report of Assessment Costs, the subject of item number 18, which is a resolution to approve the report of assessment costs for inspection and repair of blighted properties ordered through the Accelerated Sidewalk Abatement Program.
All right, colleagues, today's Committee of the Whole is being conducted to consider objections to a report of assessment costs submitted by the Director of Public Works for inspection and or repair of blighted properties through the Accelerated Sidewalk Abatement Program, and to consider approving the underlying resolution. Let's open up this hearing. First, we will hear from the Department of Public Works.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Judy Leong, representing Public Works Accelerated Sidewalk Abatement Program. This program inspects and expedites corrective action for sidewalks in poor condition along the residential and commercial corridors, which, thank you, includes and addresses accessibility-related sidewalk complaints as well as high-priority pedestrian right-of-way conditions. Under State Highway Code 5611 and Local Public Works Code Section 706, the fronting property owner is responsible for the repair and maintenance of their sidewalk fronting their property. Under Chapter 80 of the San Francisco Administrative Code, if the property owner fails to repair the sidewalk after having been duly noted, the city is entitled to perform the repair of notices and the property owner for the inspection and the abatement fees. We inspect and notify the property owner when defects are found and need to be abated. Property owners are billed inspection fee, and under this program, the property owner may elect to have the city's contractor perform the necessary abatement and to have the inspection fee and repair costs placed on their property tax. Alternatively, if the property owner does not request the city's abatement and fails to repair the defects themselves, the city accordingly repairs the sidewalk and bills the property owner inspection fee and the repair costs. If the property owner fails to pay the bill, Public Works submits an assessment for the overdue amount to the Board of Supervisors for consideration to include in the next regular tax bill. As of June 1st, 2016, 41 invoices totaling $37,617 were removed from the original list. This report, we are submitting 80 invoices totaling $72,964.90. That includes a 12% administrative fee. It is here that the department requests the board's approval of the list for assessment blighted properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, are there any questions for the Department of Public Works? Seeing none, we will open this item up to public comment, and members of the public who would like to comment on this specific item will have up to 2 minutes. First speaker, please.
Yes, Supervisors. First of all, I'm sorry that I'm taking up your time on a sidewalk repair matter. The fact is that I have received no invoices for the sidewalk repairs. I'd like to make it clear that myself as the property owner had the city and Public Works go ahead and fix the sidewalk, which is on the prospect side of my property. It was fixed, but not right, and it was stained and et cetera. So we asked the contractor to fix it. There's been a lot of communication back and forth between Public Works and the contractor to get this done. We've never had a final invoice. What I've had is an original estimate from the Department of Public Works, 2 separate estimates from the contractor that were completely mistaken, and they took into account another property owner's property. And then Public Works on May 5th sent another revised estimate, which it included sort of an enumeration and asked that both the contractor and we agree to it. I never heard anything back from the contractor. I responded again to Public Works about having the sidewalk completed. It wasn't completed. I'm sorry I'm taking over the actual 2 minutes. However, I, as a property owner, wanted it to look nice and actually agreed to have all of the sidewalk squares repaired, not just some of them. So I don't really understand why I received this, and it probably would have made more sense to have some sort of a resolution of the matter before taking up the supervisor's very important time on a sidewalk matter.
Thank you.
In addition, I received a matter that asked about whether or not the cost of the assessment should be placed on my property taxes. I don't know if I have input on that or how that works.
Thank you very much. And ma'am, and to members of the public who'd like to comment on this item, please, number one, line up to the right to speak. And secondly, there will be an opportunity after we finish with public comment for you to meet outside of the chambers with members of the Department of Public Works to try and resolve your individual issue. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name's Arlene Lewis, and I keep getting called down here and don't know why. I have fixed everything that they asked me to fix, and again, this is my third time down here. I don't see any more excess on my property or the cement. I had the cement company come out and fill up all the holes. They asked me to put a tree back in there, and then they found out through Urban League I can't put a tree there. I had to cement that one too. Now, right now, I don't have any more excess on my property, but they keep asking me to come down here. I work for City and County Housing Authority, and I have to take my personal time to come down here to find out why am I constantly being called down here. I haven't gotten any new notices except for this appointment to come down here. And the last time I was here, we went outside in the hall, talked to them. They said they would take care of it. But again, I'm back, and I don't understand.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Pamela Fine, and I object to, or I'm opposed to having these charges put on my taxes. I guess I am here because I'm on this list, and like everyone else, I shouldn't be. I checked with Steve Noya of the Department of Public Works yesterday. He sent me some information. The inspection fee that is in question that I'm being charged for was waived, and I have documents here showing that there's a zero balance, and yet I'm still on this list. So, I mean, I think with all the errors going on, people should not be assessed because it also doesn't seem like they're being corrected.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
My name is Caroline Oakes, and I have been assessed failure to perform repairs. I have a fire-damaged property that is grinding its way through the planning and building department. I have been receiving notices from the Department of Public Works for several years on repairing the sidewalk. And each time I would explain that the whole sidewalk would have to be repaired once the project was through, and I was allowed to put down tarred gravel to make it so that there was no cracks. In this case, I received a 30-day notice, and three days after the 30 days, I received a 15-day notice and also a fine. I set up a meeting with Steve Noya and Fade, I can't see his name right now. They didn't show up, and that was on June 3rd, which was still within my 15 days. So I wrote and asked them to waive the fee, and no response. So at this point, I did expend the money, that couple of $1,000 to repair the sidewalk, even though it will just be torn up again. But I feel that due to the lack of response and lack of assistance in dealing with this in a reasonable way, that it's unreasonable to add this to my taxes.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'm Joe Vargo for 3177 25th Street.
I too object to the inspection fees. It's a $290 fee where they didn't mark anything on my sidewalk. I had called them after I got the original invoice and asked if they could waive the fee. They kind of agreed to do so, I guess, but I keep getting these bills in the mail. All of these units, these are 5, very low rent controlled apartments, and to have to pay this fee for somebody to walk out and just look at your sidewalk and not mark anything just seems a little egregious and onerous by the city. So I'd hope that fee would be waived if there was no issues found on the sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Daryl Smith at 655 10th Avenue. And I'm actually here to compliment the work that Public Works did do in repairing a break in the sidewalk due to the tree that I have there. The only thing is that I really have no excuse other than the busyness of my life and work, and would have appreciated maybe a few follow-up billings. But other than that, I'm prepared to have it taken in the way of my property tax, with maybe the hope that I could get the penalty percentage waived. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to comment on this at this time on this item? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. And members of the Department of Public Works, can you please raise your hand? And there's some people in the back as well. So if you could meet them outside, they will hopefully be able to resolve your issue and come back with a recommendation to the full board. All right, with that, colleagues, let's go to roll call for introductions. Oh, are we ready to go back to items 8 and 9? Mr. Gibner, are we ready to return? Do you have an answer for us for item number 8?
Yes, Deputy City Attorney John Gibner. If the board votes 5-5 on the general plan amendment, that constitutes rejection of the general plan amendment, and the board could not then adopt item 9 until the Planning Commission either proposes a new general plan amendment that the board approves, or the board makes general plan consistency findings based on the existing general plan. My office has advised 2 times in the past on similar issues, similar circumstances, not regarding general plan approvals, but regarding nominations for commission seats made by the mayor that the board must approve within a certain amount of time, where failure to act constitutes approval. In those situations, one was for the Planning Commission, one was for the Police Commission. About a decade ago, there were 5-5 splits or anticipated 5-5 splits, and in both of those instances, we said that if the board voted 5-5 on a motion to approve a nomination by the mayor and confirm a nomination by the mayor, that constituted disapproval of the proposed nominee. It did not constitute a failure to act. And similarly here, a 5-5 vote would constitute disapproval of the ordinance before you and disapproval of the proposed general plan amendment.
Okay. So with that, seeing no names on the roster, on item number 8, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On item...
Supervisor Wiener.
So if it's 5-5, it's defeated and we don't get to the next item. Is that correct?
If it's 5-5, the clerk will call the next item, and the board will have to act on it somehow. Your options will be to either table the item, continue it to a date certain, which would be far enough in the future for the Planning Commission to act, or refer it back to committee to wait for the Planning Commission to act.
Oh, okay. And that was, as I indicated before, I was holding off my comments until the next item. But since if this ends up being a 5-5 vote, we're not going to really get to the merits of the next item. So I just want to make a few comments here.
Okay. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 9?
Item number 9 is an ordinance amending the planning code to create the 100% affordable housing bonus program and provide for development bonuses and zoning modifications for those projects. Establish the procedures for which projects shall be reviewed and approved, adding a fee for applications, exempting these projects from certain height limits, and making various findings.
Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you very much, Madam President. As I indicated before, I'm going to be supporting the general plan amendment today, and if we do get to a vote on the merits, I'll be supporting Supervisor Tang's 100% affordable housing density bonus proposal. Colleagues, we need more housing in this city, and the density bonus will allow us to generate significant new housing overall, but also significant new affordable housing at no cost to the taxpayer. Supervisor Tang has made amendments to address some of the concerns that various of us have expressed, including prohibiting demolition of existing housing, because a lot of us had concerns about the possibility of demolishing particularly existing rent-controlled housing. That's the last thing we need to be doing. So this is a very focused piece of legislation that allows us to create, in this case, 100% affordable housing with greater density. But in terms of the broader legislation, as reflected in the general plan amendment, will allow us to create more housing overall. I just have to say, I know that Supervisor Peskin and Supervisor Marr have competing legislation, the so-called density done right measure, and I don't agree with that. I think that is a dramatically scaled down piece of legislation, and the so-called density done right legislation would result in dramatically fewer units being produced, and would make it much harder, longer, and more expensive to create those affordable units. As I understand it from information we received from the Planning Department, and the Planning Department can correct me if I'm wrong, the Supervisor Tang's program will produce approximately 8,000 units of affordable housing, whereas the so-called density done right proposal will produce something like 100 units of housing. And we actually obtained a map from the Planning Department indicating that vast swaths of potentially developable area for affordable housing would simply be off limits, period, under the so-called density done right proposal. And so there's not even it's not even a close call. Supervisor Tang's legislation will allow us to create thousands and thousands of new affordable units, whereas density done right will result in the creation of de minimis, almost no new affordable units. And Supervisor Tang's proposal will allow those units to be produced in a reasonable process. The so-called density done right will make it take longer, be more expensive, and be more difficult. At some point, we either want more housing and we want more affordable housing, or we don't. And we have a choice here today and through the process as it goes forward. I'm going to come down on the side of more housing. Having average rent of $3,500 a month in this housing crisis is not acceptable, and we need more housing. We need it now. This is one step that will get us more housing, and we should approve it. So I'll be voting in favor of the general plan amendment and in favor of Supervisor Tang's 100% affordable housing density bonus program.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiner. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you. Sorry, I think we still have a couple of issues to sort out here, but I think I'll just start by talking about what is before us today, item 9, which is the 100% portion of the Affordable Housing Bonus Program. So as many of you know, the original Affordable Housing Bonus Program had contained both a mixed income program that encourages market rate developers to contribute to our affordable housing stock, and it also contained a program featuring just the 100% affordable projects. And so what was forwarded out of Land Use Committee and what is before you today, item 9, is just the 100% affordable program. I think that passing the 100% affordable program will certainly not solve our housing issues here in San Francisco, but that we should do what we can to encourage these 100% affordable projects to be built. And as a reminder, we only build one or two of these 100% affordable projects each year in San Francisco, only 1 to 2 of them on average each year, given the heavy public subsidies that these projects require. In Land Use Committee, just wanted to inform all of you that I made an amendment to prohibit the demolition of existing residential units from participating in this density bonus program. I'm going to repeat that one more time. In Land Use Committee, I made an amendment to prohibit the demolition of existing residential units from participating in this density bonus program. This clause was inadvertently left out of our legislation, but in the planning department staff's analysis, both the mixed income program and our 100% program had not taken into consideration that we would be demolishing existing residential units. So I think that this amendment should address the concern that we will be displacing residents while incentivizing affordable housing projects. Secondly, in committee, I had also made several amendments to address concerns related to small business commercial tenants. I know there's obviously more work that we can continue to do, but we have put in everything that we legally can at this moment. I would also like to note that the Planning Commission had no comments regarding modifying the 100% affordable program. They certainly had comments about how we could modify the mixed income program to make it better and stronger and to protect existing residents and tenants, but they made no recommendations for changes to the 100% affordable program. And as for the mixed income program, our office and the planning staff had always intended to have this program heard at a later date, given that we have been waiting for a feasibility analysis to be completed in the fall, which will show us more realistically where projects can occur. And so at this time, I do really want to thank planning staff for all of their work on this, including the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development. I know that they have worked really hard. I've never seen staff go out to I think it was 10 out of 11 districts here, and some more than once, to talk about this legislation and to make so many changes to it to address many of the concerns. And so again, as issues are being sorted out in terms of item 8, I just wanted to also state for the record, and if we could pass out the amendments, but I do have additional amendments to make today, which actually, many of which were discussed as the Supervisor Peskin and Marr version of the legislation was discussed. One, we are making changes to the ground floor requirement. And so this would include a requirement that the ground floor contains neighborhood serving uses, including but not limited to general and specialty grocery, health service, institutional, and public facilities, all as defined under Section 102 of the Planning Code. Again, I think that this addresses the concerns regarding displacement of neighborhood commercial tenants that are great for a neighborhood. Unfortunately, we do not have a neighborhood serving use definition in Article 7 of our Planning Code. However, we try to make this mirror the spirit of what Supervisor Peskin was getting at in his legislation. I have a summary here that I'm also going to pass out. Thank you. In terms of reporting, we also have a requirement here that we would like our planning department, our Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, to develop and further research and analyze and provide recommendations to us about other changes that we can make to the program. For example, we have heard that maybe we would like to see, especially in the mixed income program, changes to the area median income structure. So we have language in here that directs the departments to pursue that work. Thirdly, I would like to suggest, after hearing some concerns, that there will be no conditional use permitting process for 100% programs. I would like to suggest maybe a modified conditional use permit process here. And I will take these amendments if the board wants to adopt these. Essentially, under a conditional use permitting process, there are certain things that are done. There are 6 findings that must be made. There is an appeal window of 30 days, and the appeal can be made to the Board of Supervisors. So I am prepared to make amendments to our legislation so that the appeal comes to the Board of Supervisors instead of the Board of Appeals to make the 30-day appeal window the same. However, I would like to keep the fact that we are narrowing the finding section to just 3 of the 6 findings. And lastly, and that's on your summary sheet, I already summarized the appeal process and making that to the Board of Supervisors instead of the Board of Appeals. So I think that these are many of the amendments that would address many of Supervisor Peskin and Marr's concerns. There are a couple things that I will not be adopting because they actually will prohibit and create more barriers for us to create 100% affordable housing projects, which again, we only build 1 or 2 of each year on average in this city. So I don't know if we have an answer yet, but if not, we'll let Supervisor Peskin speak.
Mr. Givner, do you have an answer to Supervisor Tang's question?
Not quite yet. Working on it and having some land use lawyers come down to discuss as well.
Supervisor Peskin?
Thank you, Madam President. Through the President to Supervisor Tang, I greatly appreciate these most recent amendments, although I haven't had a chance to digest them nor talk to community stakeholders about them. But it seems like our respective pieces of legislation are getting closer together. Nonetheless, I stand by my original concern that the scope of the general plan amendment is too broad and needs to be narrowed, and I believe that that should still happen. But I am quite confident that we will be able to resolve either through your legislation or by melding the 2 pieces of legislation together, and perhaps the amendments that you've offered might even bring us there. So I'm delighted by that, and I am. You have my word that I will work with you and community stakeholders to meld those 2 versions together. But all of that notwithstanding, I still would like to reject the general plan amendment that is the subject of item number 8.
Thank you.
And then Supervisor Tang, are you going to make the amendments and send your item to committee?
I would like to take the amendments first. However, I'm still waiting some of the city attorneys for for the answer to the questions that I have.
Okay, we'll come back to the matter. And Supervisor Wiener, would you like to speak before we go to roll call for introductions?
Sure. Just briefly, given where the votes seem to potentially be falling, I imagine there will be continuing discussions, and I just truly hope that resolution, if there is one, and whatever it is in terms of a quote-unquote melding, results in significant new housing, including significant new affordable housing, because that's really what this is about. And it's great and important to involve community stakeholders, but often we hear some of the stakeholders who are involved, frankly, are not in favor of creating more housing and seem to be okay with the status quo. And I would just want to make sure that the stakeholders who are involved include people who are really deeply impacted by the shortage of housing and who can't afford to live their lives here. So that stakeholder group needs to be a broad one, because this is about the future of housing in the city.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Seeing no other names on the roster, Madam Clerk, please go to roll call for introductions.
Item 34 is roll call for introductions. Up first is President Breed.
Submit.
Next up is Supervisor Campos.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Colleagues, as you're probably aware, this past Saturday, a 5-alarm fire took place at Mission Street and 29th that led to the displacement of 58 people. It impacted 7 small businesses. I actually just came this morning from the shelter where many of the victims are staying. And it's very tragic to see this happening. And I was especially touched by my conversation with some of the victims, including Marta, who is an 89-year-old woman. Bottom line is that our community in the mission feels that we are under siege. I wish that I could say to people that the latest fire is an anomaly, but the fact is that this latest fire is the latest in a string of tragic fires that we've had over the last few years. And to be frank, this latest fire is simply too much, and we as a community and the mission have had enough. Since 2015, we've had 6 fires in the mission that have resulted in displacement. 3 people have tragically died due to those fires. 6 people have been injured, and 194 people have been displaced. It is very upsetting. And the fact is that as much as we in my office have pushed, more has to be done. The city must do more to address this all too common occurrence. The loss of life is something that we cannot accept. We have reached a point in the mission where reasonable people, not paranoid people, but reasonable people believe that arson is responsible for the various fires that are taking place. And the sad thing about that belief is that I have yet, after years of asking for information, I have yet to hear directly or get directly from the fire department the evidence that I need to tell people it wasn't arson. What we have is a fire department that is simply telling us on every fire investigation, it wasn't arson. Trust us. Again, I want to believe that. I want to say that to my residents. But we're not simply going to trust. We need verification that, in fact, the investigations have conclusively proved that there was no arson. The fire department, we have requested them to do this time and time again, needs to, once and for all, answer some critical questions. Why is there a backlog? We actually had a hearing already scheduled for next week on why it is that investigations are so far behind. And is the fire department actually asking for enough resources? And why is it that after 2 years of so many fires, we still don't have enough investigators in that fire department? Are they asking the mayor's office for the right level of staffing? Is the mayor's office denying them that staffing? What exactly is going on? I'm glad that they recently asked that one investigator be added to the investigations unit as part of their 2016-2017 budget. But one investigator, when there is such a backlog, I'm sorry, that just doesn't cut it. I'm also asking what's going on with the enforcement of codes in San Francisco. I want a clear and full examination of the building where the fire started, but I want to know throughout my district, as we see fires going down in every part of the city except for the Mission. Once again, my district wants to know what is happening in the Mission. What is it about the Mission that has led to this increase in fires, even as the number goes down everywhere else? And I have a direct ask of the mayor. Mr. Mayor, we, and I specifically as a member of the Board of Supervisors, cannot direct the departments that you're in charge of to take this more seriously. Only you, as the chief executive, have the power to do that. And I am asking you, Mr. Mayor, to make this a priority. How many more fires do we need to have in the mission for your administration to actually make this the priority that it should be? And let me give you an example. We have, right now as a city, no real systemic, cohesive strategy for helping people who have been displaced by fires. The city right now only has one person in the entire city that is responsible for addressing the needs of people who are displaced by fire. And that person is Ben Ames. Mr. Ames, and all of us who have worked with him, know that he is an exceptional individual. He does an incredible job. But he is one person. And so what happens, and this has happened again and again and again, and my colleagues who have had fires in their districts know this as well. When there is a fire, my office, has to drop everything to make sure that we work to find housing for these individuals. Why is it that we have to deal with this issue on an ad hoc basis? The city should make this the priority that it needs to be and actually have more than one person dedicated for this purpose. It is shameful that when I visit a fire victim, as I visited today, this 89-year-old, all I can tell her is, my staff, we're doing the best we can. But I have no way of guaranteeing housing right now to this 89-year-old woman. And why is it that after years of fire after fire, especially fires in places like the Mission, we don't have a policy that actually sets aside housing so that when a fire occurs, there's actually a place for people to go? I'm sorry, it's simply unacceptable. I want to say that one of the things that happens when you have a tragedy like a fire is that it also brings community together. And I am very grateful to the residents of the Mission neighborhood and all the neighborhoods in San Francisco that have stepped up to help. I want to thank them for their efforts, not only to help the individual victims, but to collectively as a community create a fund that raises resources for the needs of everyone involved. And it is sad and tragic that the city doesn't do that automatically. That community has to be the one to do it, otherwise it doesn't get done. That is not how a city should be run. That is not how we should address this issue. So with that in mind, as I noted, there is already a hearing that was scheduled for next week. I want to amend that hearing request so that there is additional information that's provided. We want the hearing that takes place next week to examine the status of fire investigations by the fire department, specifically the current status of 300 backlogged investigations. I also want to note specifically from the chief and her team what it is that they're doing to address that backlog. I also want to have a status report by the fire department on the fire that took place just recently. And I want an update on code enforcement in the Mission District. I am specifically asking the fire department, the Department of Building Inspections, and the health department, which are responsible, all three, for investigating code compliance, that they bring to this hearing specific data on their enforcement efforts in the Mission. And what, if anything, have they done to address the spike in the number of fires? Again, I kindly request that this additional information be presented next week at the Neighborhood Service and Safety Committee. Now, I want to say that as we move forward as a city, there are a number of things that need to happen. One, we need to continue to push landlords to join our Good Samaritan program so that we can provide much needed housing. The city's Good Samaritan law allows landlords to rent an apartment and below market rate for a limited period of time to those residents that have been displaced by a fire. If you are a landlord, if you own property and you're willing to participate, we ask that you call 415-557-5370. I also want to put it out there that the Mission Economic Development Agency, MEDA, has agreed to receive and distribute funds to the tenants that have been displaced by Saturday's fire. Any donations to this fund are tax deductible and will go directly to the tenants. You can also donate to the small business fund set up by the Mission Bernal Heights Merchants Association, who are also raising funds for the victims. And I want to note that right now there is nothing in place where the city actually has funds available to subsidize the housing of any fire victim. We actually, in my office, started doing that last year using the discretionary funds that we have access to as supervisors, which is up to $100,000. I think it's sad and shameful that after so many fires, such a fund does not exist for the entire city. In a budget of $9 billion, almost $10 billion, why aren't we doing more? Mr. Mayor, why aren't we doing more? The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. So, colleagues, today I'm calling a hearing regarding the status of a community center located at 66 Raymond Avenue in Visitation Valley neighborhood. You may recall that over a year ago, we successfully acquired this asset and committed to the community in a quite public way that we're going to rehabilitate the site and bring back community services to the facility. I know that the Department of Real Estate and Department of Public Works have begun some capital improvements at the site, but it's unclear to me when the facility will be completely rehabilitated and ultimately fully operational. So progress has begun, but it's been slow. So I'm eager to work with our departments to bring back the services that we've promised to the community. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to propose a hearing from the Department of Real Estate as well as the Mayor's Office and any other department involved in this particular process about specifically bringing the project timeline into the forefront and so that I can gain a better understanding as to when the completion date will occur and also begin the conversation for planning and programming for the site and as well as the services that we're going to be provided. Madam Clerk, the rest I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, just today, one resolution, certainly in light of what's happened recently across our country. You know, no place in our country is immune from senseless gun violence, and easy access to guns and ammunition continues to be a day-to-day issue across our country. This senseless gun violence that we have seen in terms of the tragedies committed in Orlando and Sandy Hook, Charleston, Aurora, and countless others prove this. On average, every single day in America, 297 people are shot and 89 people die from gun violence. Currently, gun sales in the United States are on track to reach a record high in 2016. And data continues to show that each new mass shooting in America brings a surge in share prices for companies in the firearm and ammunition manufacturing business. And it is amazing to me in hearing President Obama last week talk about the fact that we can add individuals in our country on a terrorist watch list. We can prohibit them from boarding airplanes, but we cannot prohibit them from buying automatic assault rifles. It is absolutely crazy. And as Congress continues to fail us, and the Republicans in the Senate last night failed our country to act at all, I do believe it is up to us and local governments to do all that we can to promote gun safety. And I want to thank Supervisor Avalos. A few years ago after Sandy Hook, he actually proposed a resolution that was unanimously passed by this board that I am reintroducing today, because I don't believe our city should be in the business of investing in companies that enables senseless gun violence. So I am introducing a resolution urging our retirement board, and I want to acknowledge the retirement board's president, our colleague Supervisor Cohen, to immediately divest from companies that participate in the firearm and ammunition manufacturing business. Divesting from these companies should send the message that San Francisco is and will continue to fight for common sense gun safety policies that will protect public safety and save lives. Currently, our retirement system has just over $1 million in investments in 3 different companies in the firearm and ammunition manufacturing business. In the wake of mass gun violence, a number of municipal retirement funds, including the California State Teachers Retirement System, or CalSTRS, and the country's largest pension fund, our own California Public Employees Retirement System, or CalPERS, have voted to divest from investments in firearms and ammunition manufacturers, and we need to follow suit here in San Francisco. One of the most powerful statements you can make is with your checkbook, and I believe our pension system checkbook should not be supporting companies that are in this business. Public divestment campaigns are a powerful tool for creating public policy change. We have done it here in San Francisco in the past, and I believe we need to do it again now. It's time to call the question once again. We cannot continue to see these types of violent acts occur across our country with nothing done about it. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Farrell. Supervisor Kim. Thank you. Supervisor Peskin. Supervisor Peskin? Thank you. Supervisor Weiner? Thank you. Supervisor Yee? Supervisor Avalos?
Thank you. Just piggyback on Supervisor Farrell's call for divestment from gun manufacturers. This is something that the Board of Supervisors had unanimously approved about 3 years ago, closely after Sandy Hook. I authored and the board unanimously supported this resolution. And there's a real problem with SFRs, with the San Francisco Employment Retirement System, not carrying out what we have called for in terms of divestment from not just guns, but also fossil fuels. Have been very slow, dragging their feet and making it happen. And I know there's desire on the actual commission to do the work, but staff have also been very, very difficult to work with to move forward on these priorities that the Board of Supervisors have set up. And whether there's real concurrence around divestment from fossil fuels, that certainly, we voted unanimously on that, but clearly guns are something that there's even more universal support beyond the Board of Supervisors, of course, that we shouldn't be investing our public dollars in gun manufacturers. So I want to make sure that we put my name as a co-sponsor for this second resolution. I also think it's important not just look at gun manufacturers, as well as the military-industrial complex. We do have, I'm not sure we're going to add language around that, but if we have investments in the U.S. military-industrial complex, I truly believe the U.S. military-industrial complex helps to move forward gun manufacturers, who are putting guns on our streets. So I think there's a real tie to gun manufacturers and the trillions of dollars that the U.S. invests in the military-industrial complex. I think it makes sense that we tie the two together. I'll leave it up to the author of the resolution whether to do that or not, or how, but I'll certainly be available to work with him, with Supervisor Farrell, on doing that. Last week I mentioned the passing of 2 people, Joseph Lambert, who ran creative music on Ocean Avenue. Unfortunately, I don't have an in memoriam for him this week, but next week I will have one. Another person of huge impact in District 11 was Mike Brown, and I have an in memoriam for Mr. Mike Brown. As I mentioned last week, he has been one of the leaders of inner city youth in San Francisco. It's a youth program that has been in existence now for over 20 years out in the OMI neighborhood. And Mike did it out of labor of love, really focused on how to make sure that young people in the African American community in a part of San Francisco that has been truly neglected by the city in terms of providing essential services for working families, has led the charge to make sure that many young people actually have opportunity and access to education and employment services that have helped to turn their lives around. So Mike Brown has touched thousands of youth in his time in doing that, and it's a real loss to the community that has relied on his advocacy and his organizing that he's passed. And his family has also been really involved in the my neighborhood as well. Gwen Brown, his daughter, has been running inner city youth in all this time with him. So I want to announce today, in addition to his in memoriam, where funeral services will be held honoring his life. There'll be a viewing on June 26th between 2 and 6 p.m. at Dugan's Mortuary at 3434 17th Street in San Francisco. Again, that'll be June 26, 2016. Just recently, about 3 years ago, Mike had lost his son, and his son's service was in the same place. There'll be a funeral June 27th at 11 a.m. at the San Francisco Christian Center at 5825 Mission Street. That's in the outer Mission, 5825 Mission Street. And the burial for Mr. Brown will be at Woodlawn Cemetery, Ivy Garden, 1000 El Camino, Colma, after the funeral service. And then the community will be gathering for repast at Dominic's at Oyster Point. If people have cards to send the family, they can send them to Inner City Youth, care of Brown Family at 96 Broad Street in San Francisco. And they're also requesting that if people have pictures or video, and there's many video and photos of Mike Brown and his work in the community, to send them to mikebrownfamily@gmail.com. This is a huge loss, and worked many years with Mr. Brown, making sure that his services could expand, and working closely to make sure that young people had real access to opportunity in his district. And for Black History Month, in I think it was 2011, I did honor him here. So he's one that's been very close to my office, and it's a great loss, and very sorry for his family. The rest I'll submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Madam President, that concludes our roll call for introductions.
Thank you. And thank you, Supervisor Avalos, for the in memoriam for Mike Brown. I've known him for many, many years. He was a true champion for the community and for young people all over the city. He is definitely going to truly be missed in the community. And please add my name to the in memoriam. Thank you. With that, Madam Clerk, can you please read public comment?
Item 35 is public comment. At this time, the public may now address the entire Board of Supervisors for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board, to include the minutes and items on the adoption without reference to committee calendar, items 36 through 38. Public comment is not allowed when an item has been previously subject to public comment at a board committee, as in the case with the items on consent, new and unfinished business, or the committee reports, items 1 through 33. Pursuant to the board's rules of order, direct your remarks to the board as a whole, not to individual supervisors, and not to the audience. Speakers using translation assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time. If you would like to display your document on the overhead projector, please state such to SFG TV and remove the document when the screen should return to live coverage of the meeting.
First speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisor. Andrew Yeba, Chinatown Missionary Officer. One should observe one's position for taking on daily works of cultivation and pathways with good discipline. With virtues of humanity, love, and mercy, one leads on a destiny of progress for bright future. One should know of heaven and destiny in order to take on life pathway with wisdom. To hold on heavenly true heart for cultivation and to apply heavenly true self of mighty nature for pathway would have true success for one's professional career. The natural heavenly laws for reward and punishment means we should accomplish more good deeds and avoid wrongful behaviors. Government policies should lead on direction of complete perfection of universal laws for the human civilization in developmental progress in good proportion and balances. Political leaders must seek daily new improvement for one's virtue and methodology, or principle with wisdom for the worldly rescue and protection. One should ultimate one's self-nature and destiny to the point of 100% in order to maximize true studies on the daily working pathways, so one can make sure of good success without any missing and losing grounds. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Thank you, President Breed and all the cabal. My name is Christopher Dahl, and I live at 6th and Howard, 10 blocks and less than 40 years from sea level. I rise to comment on seeing the obvious. I've recently come across a new phrase. It speaks to so much that I see happening in our world today, I have to share it. The phrase is cognitive miser. You know, a miser like Scrooge. It's about people who don't want to spend any more calories than they really have to on their thought process. If you ask, and I have a perfect illustration of it, if you ask a group of people to say how many, that is, what fraction of English words end in ng, people will come back with some number. And if you ask how many English words end in ing, they'll come back with a much, much larger number, even from the same people you just asked about ng. Why? Because it's easier to stop burning calories once you realize that it doesn't sound at all like English, so there can only be a few words that end in ng. But ing rings and sings in the memory, and the number mounts because people will eventually recall that almost every single verb in English can end in ing. If you're deciding whether to scamper up the tree away from the snake or down the tree away from the eagle, well, a little miserliness can be the survival edge. A quick thought can help you live to have a second quick thought. But these days we have the time and the body fat to be cognitive investors. Take a second thought for the lava under your feet. Try to step behind an issue and see how things look. Frame problems another way. Who knows, you might actually find a way out of your box. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Greetings, supervisors. My name is Christopher Fulkerson. I'm a cab driver here in San Francisco. I've been driving in San Francisco for 25 years. I earned cab medallion 43. There is no such thing as a free medallion. And I serve on the Municipal Transportation Agency's Taxi Task Force as a driver representative. I want to speak to you briefly today in general terms about a crisis that's occurring, of which you're well aware, within the transit industry, not only nationally but internationally. And a lot of the problem has arisen right here in San Francisco due to the actions and business operations of certain companies. Those companies target the weaknesses in local communities and move in on them with allegations of entrepreneurship and so forth. The attempts to solve the problems that have arisen have resulted in Sacramento in two bills that are clearly insufficient to handle the problem, one of which would attempt to put the entire state of California minus San Francisco under the jurisdiction of the Public Utilities Commission. Now, I'd like to say as forcefully as I can that the Public Utilities Commission, as has been announced by the state auditor, is in no position to enforce any laws. And furthermore, it really should be remembered that they are a utilities commission. They are not a transit corporation. Please, in your interactions with your state, local, and with your state and national colleagues, please do something to look at these issues more directly and come up with more viable alternatives to the solutions which are being found, which are insufficient. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, Supervisors. My name is Dean Seguiris. I work as an engineer in the semiconductor industry in Silicon Valley. Today I want to talk about the spiritual discipline of Falun Gong, which I've been practicing myself for 19 years. And I want to talk about some developments related to the persecution against people who practice this peaceful meditation. This past Friday, it was reported in major media around the world that a 94-year-old former Nazi guard at Auschwitz was convicted in a German court of complicity in the murder of 170,000 people, and he was sentenced to 5 years in jail. This reminds us of the massacre that claimed millions of lives 75 years ago. In the 21st century, whether you are aware of it or not, a similar genocide has been taking place in China against millions of people who practice Falun Gong. The persecution of Falun Gong began in 1999 and includes illegal detention, confiscation of people's assets, torture, and even the forced harvesting of people's bodily organs for profit. The United States Congress took action last week on June 13th, and they passed House Resolution 343 to condemn this crime. Also, in the past 2 to 3 years, we have seen more and more of the thugs who are responsible for the persecution brought to justice in China, including the high-profile arrests of Zhou Yongkang and Bo Xilai, two figures who played major roles in the horrific crime of forced organ harvesting. It is only a matter of time before the persecution comes to an end, and the full details of it will be brought to light. We all hope that the city of San Francisco will find itself standing on the right side of history when that day comes. And one little thing that can be done is to help make sure that Falun Gong practitioners, as well as the Divine Land Marching Band, can be allowed to be part of our community parades, including the Chinatown Parade and Japantown parades. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Madam President and Supervisors. My name is Steve Espas, and I'm a business owner. I will also talk about the Falun Gong issue. San Francisco is one of the most progressive cities in the U.S. and the world. Our city is recognized for being a leader in defending human rights, individual choice, and belief, and we are proud of that. Yet when it comes to the Falun Gong issue, it just happens that San Francisco is probably the only city outside of China that constantly denies Falun Gong participation in these parades, such as the Chinese New Year Parade and Cherry Blossom Parade. Why is that? Is it due to the influence from the Chinese propaganda? Is it a language or cultural barrier? Is it misunderstanding of this peaceful meditation practice, or simply that not more has been done to get San Franciscans familiar with Falun Gong? Maybe it's all of the above. I have a challenge for the Board of Supervisors. That is, to produce a champion that would lead the way to stop any kind of discrimination against Falun Gong in San Francisco. A champion who will make sure our city does not fall behind in an area that is proud to be a leader in. A champion who I'm personally willing to work with to make it happen. It could be a resolution similar to the one that just passed the House, or an updated one that passed this very Board of Supervisors on January 2006 that condemned the persecution of Falun Gong, or just brainstorming ideas how to educate San Franciscans about Falun Gong, its benefits, by organizing free workshops around the city to learn and get educated of this great and amazing practice. Again, my name is Steve, and my number is 408-489-5752. I'll be glad to talk to someone who would like to look into this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary McGuire, and I'm here on behalf of the San Francisco Taxi Workers Alliance to ask that you support Supervisor Peskin's resolution to oppose State Assembly Bill 650, unless amended, to provide for county regulation of taxis. Our opinion is that it would be a grave mistake to place the regulation in the hands of the already overburdened PUC. Along with the buses and the shuttles and limos, the agency has the responsibility of regulating 180,000 TNC drivers statewide and 27,000 in San Francisco alone. And President Michael Picker has expressed his desire to be relieved of this responsibility. The bill, in its current state, it exempts San Francisco from most of the provisions, but not the reduced insurance requirements. So currently, we require minimum liability coverage of $1 million for taxis, and this bill would reduce that requirement to a maximum payout of $300,000 per incident. So if multiple people are injured, is that really enough? And the paratransit program requires $1 million in liability coverage. So of concern is that would taxis no longer be eligible to participate in this program? And what would the paratransit users do for transportation in this case? Would they be left without any way to get around? Also, the bill requires coverage only while providing taxi service, and so that's really unclear. What does that mean? And I keep thinking of the Uber driver that was not providing Uber service when Sophia Liu was killed. So that's a great concern as well. And even though San Francisco now we're carved out of this bill, when we're surrounded by the rest of the state of deregulation, you wonder maybe how long is that going to last? And I feel that we're in jeopardy. So please support this resolution and reject this increasing deregulation of taxi service throughout the state. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Carl McMurdo. I've driven taxi for 40 years. I want to thank Aaron Peskin for a resolution under item 37. The strategy to replicate the TNC model in a race to the regulatory bottom is a huge mistake. AB 650 would deregulate taxi supply, vehicle supply, and the rates of fare. In New York State, 1937, the Haas Act was passed to prevent these same two ills, which had proven very destructive to the taxi industry. Even here, one of the TNC sidecar went bankrupt, and their business model was each ride was going to the lowest bidder. That just doesn't work. So AB 650 would erode driver earnings, public safety, consumer protections, service to the disabled community. You'll see more pollution and traffic jams. And whereas TPAC, the taxi group, has apparently given up and wants to race to the bottom, DeSoto Cab and others of us want to race to a higher standard and hold the TNCs and taxis to the same standard, but a higher one to level the playing ground. And there is a lawsuit. I spent the last 2 hours in federal court. Edward Chin, 17th floor. Let's see, DeSoto Cab versus Picker et al. Defendants motion to dismiss due to lack of jurisdiction. After 2 hours of arguments about something called the technical arguments of the Johnson Act, it was taken under submission. But the point is, it may evolve if this lawsuit goes forward that you will end up with jurisdiction over TNCs. The website ads for Lyft and Uber are explicit that the services are strictly on demand, but that's a bifurcation, the criterion by which the state controls only prearranged transportation, so a mistake has been made, it appears. Now, right now, the Silicon Valley investors are siphoning money and putting it in foreign banks rather than having the taxi drivers make money, the disabled people being served. People who bought medallions are in the lurch, the credit unions loan money, they're twisting in the wind. So I hope you'll support Aaron. It's a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Well, here we are in San Francisco, the state of California. Probably more religions exist in this state than anywhere else on the planet, all alleging to wanting to do the right thing, but by and large, all in service to Mammon, the God of greed. I've shared with you, for I am that I am as I am here, speaking truth to power, free of all fear, again, that as you do unto the least of me, you do unto yourselves. That's the animals. I gave you the prophecy of the 40-day strike that frees Leonard Peltier, but that's not important to you, and now you're going to keep spinning around, attaining nothing but going deeper in the hole. You talk about guns, but you disregard the slaughterhouse, whereas 5,000 adults and 480 children die every day from cancers from the animal flesh industry by intent. You're worried about the possibility of arson. It most certainly is arson in the mission, and it's not going to stop. These people that can afford that $3,500 a month, who are they? The net industry characters and the lawyers. They're all behind this. They don't need the poor people here. and those that are in the poor department, the people that actually work, as opposed to the other industries I just mentioned that are thieves, that are also, by the way, attacking law enforcement and veterans, looking to federalize law enforcement and looking to take the weapons away from all veterans. Your best bet is to stand up and general strike the system, get off the damn fence, stop paying your mortgages and rents, because the answers you seek are not in this room, but within your heart. And if you serve mammon, you'll play forever Sataniel's backgammon. Shut it down. I am Peter. I say it, you hear it, so be it. That's where the power lies. It will never be with the lawyers. Only 5% of the lawyers try to do the right thing.
Thank
the
you.
Other 200.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you, sir. Sir, your time is up.
Pure and simple.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is John Kelly. I am a resident of senior disabled housing of the San Francisco Housing Authority. President Breed, I bring this message to you and your fellow supervisors, at least the ones that are listening. There is something rotten in Denmark. And by Denmark, I mean the San Francisco Housing Authority. And by something rotten, I mean the Housing Authority's extreme discrimination in admissions to housing of the senior disabled. You heard me correctly. Extreme discrimination in admissions against seniors and women to disabled housing. You do not have to take my word for it. The Housing Authority's own documents, which I have brought with me right here, prove the discrimination and show the very strong likelihood that the discrimination will continue. I have attached these documents to letters that I've written to each of you, and I request that you review them and act upon them. I know this board has limited jurisdiction involving the Housing Authority, but the discrimination victims are your constituents, and I ask that you intervene on their behalf to end the extreme discrimination against seniors and women to senior disabled housing of the San Francisco Housing Authority. And I have these letters which I'll give to the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. I live in District 2, Mark Farrell's district. I live at JFK Towers, 2451 Sacramento Street. I'm also a disabled veteran. I'm currently, in December 2015, a female committed suicide, jumped from her balcony, and she is a Russian immigrant. Due to her lack of communication, language barriers, we were all puzzled because currently right now, District 2 is not diversifying Department of Public Health Services in our district. They are focusing more on Mission District, Bayview District, and other districts, but currently right now, District 2 does not have any treatment programs for the subsidized housing tenants, and some of us are, low-income, disabled veterans. So what we'd really like to address is that the lack of, when I heard you earlier in the session about substance abuse, UCSF funding and everything, but currently right now, there's a lack of leadership that I know there's a lot of Google employees, Yahoo, which are tech employees that live in District 2. They do not want to be bombarded or seeing long lines of people standing with DPH services. So, and I do believe that, I know this board also, supports, different communities, but there is a large Eastern European community living in our building, Jewish immigrants from Russia, and I do believe their lives matter as well. So I want to advocate for the Chinese community, the Asians that live in my community, and they're underrepresented, and my tenant association president is Russian an immigrant from Russia, but he could not be here, so I do have his endorsement to speak on his behalf. The second issue is that I'm also a veteran, and I am eligible for full benefits for the GI bill for education benefits and for a VA home loan. But currently, right now, the Mayor's Office of Housing is refusing to accept veterans' VA loans, and we're being denied access into housing. So even though the board here speaks about housing, providing housing for everyone, they're excluding us from allowing us to use our VA loans. And recently, the federal government, within 4 counties across the United States, made San Francisco, Marin County, Alameda, and San Mateo County eligible for $1 million home loans. So we have the highest, and we have the ability to actually participate in the below market rate housing, but we have been denied. And so this is currently right now with Miss, I forget, Maria. So I really request your assistance to actually stop creating barriers against veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Tara Hausman, and I'm here speaking as a member of the San Francisco Taxi Workers Alliance. I urge you to pass Supervisor Peskin's resolution, item number 37. I don't know if you have access yet to SFMTA and SFO's letter of concerns about AB 650, but they are very detailed, cogent, and prescient in their objections to the bill. I urge you to read it. This was a bill regulating horse racing facilities and passed the state Senate as such. And then it was gutted, and all this language regulating taxis and giving, deregulating taxis and giving it over to the CPUC was added later. The CPUC does not want to regulate taxis. They don't even want to regulate TNCs. They don't have the urge. They don't have the money. They don't have the personnel. And their record so far in ensuring access to the disabled is abominable. And everything that San Francisco has worked for toward access for the disabled and seniors will go down the drain. I'm not going to take up all of my time. I'm just saying that Supervisor Peskin's resolution to either amend or oppose AB 650 is very reasonable, and I urge you all to vote in favor of it.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Robert Chizana, and I'm a cab driver. I'm a medallion holder and have been doing this for about 35 years in San Francisco. First of all, I would ask you to support Supervisor Peskin's amendment to the proposed bill in the Senate. But there's much more to it, and there is a great fear that in some form or another, this bill will pass. And what it will do is deregulate the taxi industry throughout California, and at this time, with the exception of San Francisco. There is an enormous danger that if this happens, we will get an invasion of taxis from outside of the city. And yet, we have a mayor who is neutral. He will not enforce any of the regulations of the city to prevent this invasion. Also, we have an inability at this time to enforce regulations of the TNCs. The PUC doesn't enforce them. They have a total of 22 enforcement officers for the entire state of California, and supposedly half of those are chair-bound. So nothing gets done. They don't have a database. And I remember the concern some time ago of this supervisors talking about the crash of a coach in Union Square. They don't have.
Thank you. Your time is up, Speaker. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Last but hopefully not least, Ed Healy. I'm a taxi driver. I'd also urge you to back Supervisor Peskin's, this is number 37, opposing AB 450. 650. You can oppose 450 if you can find it. Oppose 650. The reasons for this is a statewide running, had been mentioned. Local jurisdiction for taxi drivers is very different running taxis in Los Angeles or San Francisco or in small towns. It should be run locally. Furthermore, I believe that the TNC should be put under local control in order to limit the numbers. Now, the bill 650 calls for no limits on the number of taxis, and supposedly this is going to give us a chance to compete. Well, there's already far too many taxi-like vehicles on the street, clogging it and polluting it. This probably would be the death knell of a serious taxi business, which I guess maybe some people would like. There's two things here that are beyond, I've never seen before. They're saying that you're capping the amount that you can insure somebody. Not an insurance, you always talk about the low limits. Nobody caps the top limits. So they're capping this at $300,000. And at Flywheel, we've got 1 million, 2 million. They're telling us we can't do that, that you've got to lower it to $300,000. Well, at $300,000 is totally inadequate. Any kind of a major accident will go over $300,000. Basically, it's lowering the limits of financial responsibility so that the people who are not financially responsible can go out and drive taxis instead of companies. This would create great hardship, and there's no background checks either, by the way. So you could spend 7 years in prison.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Does the speed of time go faster this time of year, or is it just me, or maybe it's our newest, oldest member trying to improve the agenda? I have an idea about the fires, something that happens very rapidly, the fire and the Mission. Something we got from the hotel community, the sprinkler ordinance. I'm told that the hotel that was there actually fared quite well because it had a sprinkler. Whether or not it's arson or not, in fact, in the hotels, we arson ourselves, and the sprinklers save us. We've done some amazing things like sprinklers. Maybe it's off the radar, but it's something that preserves housing and it builds new housing. Those are the kinds of really carefully thought out tactical strategies that we need to maintain and preserve new housing. We've done some really amazing things and creative things in the Tenderloin. I defy anyone to say that we're not building housing and we're not interested in building housing. We have a project that has rent stabilization on it. It was built after 1979. We have another project that we did that has studios for under $1,000 a month. There's the family housing at Eddie and Taylor, which is a very complicated. We put one together, the Shorenstein deal already talked about. It was so complicated that the Meeting twins came out on opposing sides of it. Those are the kinds of situations that we're facing when we're trying to build in a city that's already totally, completely developed, and what we're saying is that we're going to now bring it into being overdeveloped. Rather than trying to take the public participatory process that is essential to building housing, not standing in the way of it, rather than taking it out, why don't we admit it when we've got a problem that we can't handle? We're having a cultural battle with the South. Why can't we reach out to our partners in the North? The density in Oakland and the East Bay is half the density in San Francisco. Why can't we work together?
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Tom Gilberti, a few years ago, maybe 5, 10, you would take a mortgage out to get a taxi medallion. Now it's worthless. Kind of reminiscent of what happened with Wall Street and our economy. And this is on this city's watch, on this mayor's watch. $300,000, I received a little bit, twice as much to sit in a wheelchair for 27 years, and in my market rate apartment, I am running out of money to be there. We're evolving. Again, 1849, they found gold in a mine, and that mine played out. And so what happens is they evolved. They went somewhere else. Okay, we're going to go back to the overhead. And this is, we're going to run through it quickly. A housing plan. Everybody says there's no housing plan. Ban Ellis Act evictions. That's against the law, but we can do it. Ban no-fault evictions. Again, against the law. Freeze all market rate rents. And reset long-term residents, if you can find any. Establish one city rent control for the whole city. Renter's dividend. When your home is sold, a renter gets a percentage of the selling price dependent upon the amount of years they've been there. And also landlords' entry into a San Francisco public bank that we need to establish here in this city. And then the fifth part, the new residential formula, which is basically a 30% open market, but even that open market is rent controlled. We want the people to stay. 10% of the homes, we're not telling what prices they are, but go to seniors in the local zip codes. 15% go to 20-year residents from the local zip codes. 5% seniors from the entire city. 15% to teachers, lawyers. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who'd like to provide public comment at this time? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. All right. Actually, let's go back to our 3 p.m. special order under DPW in order to make adjustments. Items number 17 and 18.
So my apologies. This is a corrected list for the blighted assessments. And we spoke with the owners, and 3 of the 6 property owners are willing to pay, which are 1750 LaSalle, 59 Lundy Street, Lane, 655 10th Avenue. 2 property owners we actually need to research, and the 2 properties are 537 Grove and 3177 25th Street, and one was actually waived yesterday, which was 679 12th Avenue.
Thank you very much. So, colleagues, is there a motion to amend based on the current list? Moved by Supervisor Peskin, seconded by Supervisor Campos. Colleagues, can we take the amendments without objection? Without objection, the amendments pass. And on the item as amended, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On item 18, Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos. Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Weiner. Weiner, aye. Supervisor Yee. Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. There are 10 ayes.
The resolution as amended is adopted unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, let's return to items 8 and 9. Supervisor Tang, are you ready to go?
Sure. I would just ask again, colleagues, that we are able to adopt the amendments that I proposed for item 9. I'm willing to continue this item for a week, but I would also like to ask that we, at the same time, continue the general plan amendment with it as well. And I certainly am aware of the 90-day clock ticking. I do not intend to do anything to inadvertently let the general plan amendment go and take into effect automatically. That is not my intention. I think we just need a week to sort out a few issues at this moment.
Okay, Supervisor Tang.
So I guess I'll make a formal motion.
Before you make that motion, I want to close out the hearing on item number 17. This hearing has been held and is now filed. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you. So I'd like to just at this moment then make a formal motion to accept the amendments for item 9.
Were those the amendments that you distributed earlier?
Yes,
Okay,
and that I
thank you.
stated on the record, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so Supervisor Tang has made a motion to amend item number 9 as distributed earlier. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Avalos. Colleagues, can we take the amendments without objection? Without objection, those amendments passed. Supervisor Tang, did you have any other comments? Okay, Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you. I have a couple other amendments that I'd like to make to this as well.
Specifically, item number 9.
Yes, item number 9.
Thank you.
Making sure that we're preserving existing housing, an amendment to ensure that no affordable housing bonus projects could be approved that include the demolition of existing housing on an adjacent parcel. So looking to, I think we might need to clarify language between this week and next week, but here's what I would read into the record. On page 17, line 21, amend subsection 206.3b6 to read, does not demolish, remove, or convert any residential units, and added language is, and does not include any other parcel that has any residential units that could be demolished, removed, or converted as part of this project.
Supervisor Avalos, and I just want to make sure that I clearly understand what you're proposing. I'm looking at page 17, and everything has been stricken from the resolution. Is that accurate based on the amendments, Supervisor Tang?
The page numbers may have changed given the amendments I had submitted today. So maybe our deputy city attorney can answer that.
Here's what, then I want to make sure that this is the language I want to have in there. And basically I want to make sure is that an eligible site does not merge with a parcel at a site that's not ineligible and removes existing housing off the market. I don't want to see that we're including that maximization of developers' profit. We want to keep the project and the bonus program for that one site itself.
Deputy City Attorney John Gibner, can you explain if that could be the case or not based on the existing legislation?
Deputy City Attorney John Gibner. The Supervisor Avalos' proposed amendment would fit into Supervisor Tang's amendment of the whole that she distributed earlier. At page 19, line 21, it would be in addition onto subsection 6 there.
Okay.
So the next amendment would be on...
Should we take them each one at a time, Supervisor Avalos?
Sure.
Okay. So Supervisor Avalos has posed an amendment to not include adjacent properties that may not be eligible for this particular legislation. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Tang. Colleagues, can we take that amendment without objection? Without objection, the amendment passes.
So the next amendment would be to, and I have language here that I've shared with everyone, including with Deputy City Attorney John Gibner, and that is to make sure that we're having a strong effort by the Planning Department, the Office of Small Business, Office of Economic and Workforce Development, and Mayor's Office of Community Development to report on developing a small business relocation fee or program for business displaced by the Affordable Housing Density Bonus Program projects. And I'm not sure if I want to read the whole language, but you have on your sheet of paper language that's directing planning and those other departments to carry out that function. So my motion would be...
Based on what specific definition of a small business?
It would be businesses that are in sites that are potentially displaced by reconstruction of property where there's a small business. And it wouldn't be residential because that wouldn't be allowed, but it would be where there's a small business. For instance, there's a site on Mission Street where Little Joe's Pizza is. It's one story, that one building that, I'm not sure if they're renting or not, but that could be a site where they would need perhaps relocation services and support.
Okay. Mr. Gibner, would we need to specifically define small business
You would not. The new language essentially asks for a report and recommendation back to the board. So the report and recommendation could recommend to the board what small businesses should be covered by this potential fee or these potential services.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Tang. Colleagues, can we take that amendment without objection? Without objection, the amendment passes. Anything else, Supervisor Avalos? No. Thank you. Supervisor Tang?
Thank you. And I thank our MOHCD staff for waiting patiently. One of the things that I would like to ask them about is what is in the queue in terms of our 100% affordable housing projects. I would like to be able to move this forward, hopefully after our issues are sorted out, but I just wanted to see if they could speak to that and what projects might potentially use the affordable housing bonus program for the 100% program.
Good evening, Supervisors. Kate Hartley, Mayor's Office of Housing. So right now we have a very active queue. The developments that could potentially use a bonus program to great benefit are primarily in the Mission, and we all are very aware that we need as much housing in the Mission as possible. Those are 1950 Mission, 17th and Folsom, 490 South Van Ness, and 1296 Shotwell. If we could apply the bonus to those programs, we could potentially get the same number of units that would constitute a whole new project for a fraction of the cost of going out and buying a parcel in the Mission and having to construct with land acquisition added to that. So we are actively in pre-dev right now. We hope to break ground on those parcels in 2017. So they definitely could put the bonus program to great use.
Thank you. Oh, I have a follow-up question.
Supervisor Kim?
Thank you. I just have a follow-up question. I'm glad to hear that those 3 projects are potentially eligible for this bonus. I know this because I have pushed some of our projects in the district that I represent to go an additional couple of floors. And the response I often get is that it's not worth the price because of the cost of changing to steel or to do, more solid material as you go taller. And so it hasn't been cost effective. And actually many nonprofit developers have turned down the opportunity to get to a bigger project simply because of the pure cost. In these 3 projects, are you telling me that we have the funding necessary to actually raise these projects by 3 floors? Because if we're going to do this, I don't want it to be symbolic. I want there to actually be real outcomes that we know that we can fully fund.
So some can go 3 floors. Some may go slightly less. There are contextual things to consider in the ultimate height and unit count, but they still could use the bonus program. It does getting.
Have you costed out what it would be for these 3 projects to add these additional floors?
Yes, and we do have the money for the additional unit counts. Some of them would not be a full 3 floors, but we still could use the bonus program.
Could you go into more details for each of the projects?
For example, we are looking at 17th and Folsom. Right now we're at 100 units. We have the possibility of going to 130 units. That would be facilitated in the costing of it with a pending cap and trade application, which was shortlisted at the state. So that would be an additional $7.5 million, but not all of that would be borne by the city. So we have approved that additional density, and we're very hopeful that we get the cap and trade, and we would love to see it go to 130 units.
When you say you've already approved the density, what does that mean?
We've asked the sponsor to go to the state to apply for 130 units. If they can't get the additional height through the regular entitlements process, then they would return the funds.
I understand. And for the other 2 projects, have you costed out what the additional floors would cost those projects?
So typically on those developments, which are Type 1 or Type 3, the additional cost for added units is about $250,000 per unit. So the combination of units of the projects that I laid out are between 65 and 70 units. And that would cost about $17.5 million in addition to what would just be at the regular height. Again, that would be a significantly lower number than if we were to go and build those units on another project that we had to buy.
No, I fully support, growing our affordable housing projects. I think that's great. I just want to relay that what I often hear is that, project sponsors don't want to go to a taller building simply because of the pure cost of building a taller building, which requires a change in materials that are more expensive.
It does depend on location. Now, I know in Mission Bay, for example, with the soils, which are different than other neighborhoods, you have structural considerations.
Was not in Mission Bay, but yeah.
I'm just using that as an example. You have structural considerations that can be prohibitively expensive. So we look at these buildings considering many things: the structure, the cost, the context, the neighborhood outreach that we do. As you know, we require all our developers to do extensive community outreach. So we want to have a combination of considerations in play and get the most units we can within our budget and within something that the community is supportive of.
Okay, thank you.
And the bonus program will help us do that.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Tang?
Thank you. So then at this time, then I would just like to make a formal motion to continue items 8 and 9 to our next board meeting.
Okay. Supervisor Tang, you want to continue it to next week's board meeting and not necessarily submit your item to committee?
That's correct. I'd like to continue it.
Okay. So Supervisor Tang has made a motion to continue items 8 and 9 to the meeting of June 28, 2016. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Peskin.
So with regard to item number 8, which I've been very consistent about being crafted too broadly and still needing to be recrafted and retailored in a more narrow way, I don't think anything is going to change between today and a week from today. And respectfully, I still think that needs to be more narrowly tailored by the planning department and approved by the commission. So I would speak against the continuance of item number 8. I think that we should refer that to planning, have them recraft that, and then whether be it in committee or be it at the full board, once that is done, take up item number 9. I do think that given the changes, which I have yet to look at carefully and the community has yet to vet, it would probably be better if the public could comment on that in committee. Because these are changes which I actually think will be welcomed by community stakeholders, but they should have the opportunity to speak to them. So respectfully, I would oppose the continuance and hope that we could get planning to more narrowly craft the general plan amendment that is the subject of item number 8.
Thank you, Supervisor Peskin. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you. I again just would like to ask for 1 week. I had been asked to continue these items for a week, and I am actually trying to do that so that we could sort out a few more issues. Again, we will work with Planning Department on crafting a more narrowly tailored general plan amendment overall for our affordable housing bonus program. I would just say that in terms of the amendments, these are all issues that were raised in the density done right proposal, so it's nothing in terms of new concepts. These are things that have been discussed in committee. This is what people have asked for at land use and so forth. So again, not new concepts. So I would ask for a continuance on both items.
Thank you, Supervisors Hang. Seeing no names on the roster, on the motion to continue, Deputy City Attorney John Givner.
Just one timing point so that everyone is on the same page. As Supervisor Tang mentioned, the 1 week continuance would not put you outside the 90-day period for potentially rejecting the general plan amendment. If the board voted the general plan amendment down next Tuesday, then that would be a rejection, and the Planning Commission would potentially take up a new general plan amendment. If the board votes to approve the general plan amendment next Tuesday, that would be approval on first reading. And the second reading would take place on July 12th. At that point, technically, the general plan amendment would have gone into effect anyway, but the board could still act on it. So you will have next week as essentially a final decision point on the general plan amendment.
Thank you for that clarity. Seeing no names on the roster, Madam Clerk, on the motion to continue 1 week to the meeting of June 28, 2016, can you please call the roll?
Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
No.
Campos, no. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, no. Supervisor Peskin.
No.
Peskin, no. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee. Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
No.
Avalos, no. There are 6 ayes and 4 noes, with Supervisors Campos, Kim, Peskin, and Avalos in the dissent.
Items 8 and 9 will be continued to the meeting of June 28, 2016. All right, Madam Clerk, let's go to the items for adoption without reference to committee.
Items 36 through 38 are being considered for immediate adoption without committee reference. A single roll call vote may enact these items. A member may object, sever an item, and have it considered separately.
Does any member of the board want to sever any items?
Item 37.
37. Any other members of the board? All right. On the remaining items, Madam Clerk, 36 and 38, please call the roll.
On items 36 and 38, Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. There are 10 ayes.
Those items are adopted unanimously. Please read item 37.
Item number 37 is a resolution urging California state legislators to amend or oppose California State Assembly Bill 650, Public Utilities Commission regulation of taxi cabs, in recognition of negative impacts on local transportation services and consumer safety protection.
Supervisor Peskin?
Thank you, Madam President. First, I would like to amend, and I've distributed this amendment, to remove one whereas paragraph on page 1 between line 16 and line 20, which paragraph is repeated elsewhere in the resolution. So I'd like to make that motion, and then insofar as we do not have a unanimous complement to approve this, I would like to make a motion after we adopt the amendment to continue this item 1 week.
Supervisor Peskin has made a motion to amend. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Avalos. Can we take the amendments without objection? Without objection, the amendments pass unanimously. And on the motion to continue this item to the meeting of June 28, 2016, is there a second? Second by Supervisor Cohen. On the motion to continue, can we take that without objection? Without objection, this item will be continued to the meeting of June 28, 2016. All right, Madam Clerk, please read the in memoriams.
Today's meeting will be adjourned in memory of the following individual, Michael L. Brown, on behalf of Supervisors Avalos and Breed.
All right, this brings us to the end of our meeting. Madam Clerk, is there any other business before the board today?
No, that concludes our business for today.
Thank you, colleagues. We are adjourned.